All right, everybody, we're back live. Welcome back for day 2 of our annual budget sessions. Apologize for the little bit of a late start today. We were all trying to get some computers up and running this morning, so we're good to go now, and we'll turn it over to Ben for his continued presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to start today looking at our, it's Fund 15, or on your spreadsheets, it's TDA, otherwise known as the Occupancy Tax Fund. As we go through this, it's going to be broken up into sections. The first is the revenues. Then you're going to have promotions, tourism promotions, then tourism related, and then finally wellhead. Wellhead and tourism related are all lumped together as far as the statutes as to what we can spend money on. We have guidelines that we can only spend a certain percentage on promotions, or we have to spend a certain percentage on promotions. The rest can be spent on tourism related. So we're going to go through this. Once again, projected a 40% reduction in OC tax this year versus previous years. You can see that as we look, it's going to be similar to how we had yesterday. In the blue, you're going to see manager revised, which is the budget as I revised it prior to COVID, and then you're going to see revised for COVID, which is where we made adjustments to revenues and expenditures because of the pandemic. So you'll see that we had a pretty hefty reduction in our revenues overall for occupancy tax. We also took down you'll see this in some of the other funds, but investment earnings in some has gone down because we don't expect as good of a return. We've kept it the same here. So if you scroll down, Sandra, we'll get into expenses, unless anybody has a question on promotions. Revenues. All right, so tourism promotions.
I have a question. Mm-hmm. Why is there nothing under event promotion?
Yes, thank you. I was getting ready.
Under event promotion for revenues?
For revenue.
Oh, we don't have any.
They don't make any revenue from that, I don't think.
Well, it was projected.
We do. We just.
We're
We're not going to have events.
Okay,
We won't be having all the stuff going on.
Yeah, so scroll up so that they can see. So event promotion.
It's that line that's.
We're not going to be running anything. Okay.
Yeah, our revenue is going to be almost non-existent as far as events go.
You don't even think later in the year?
We'd rather plan for the worst.
Okay.
We're going to generate some for July 4th.
Probably. Well, that event doesn't make
really
any money.
Yeah.
So that event, I don't know that it probably won't generate any revenue.
Don't the vendors, do they pay anything?
Well, then that's a discussion that we need to have today a little bit after we get through the budget, is about the 4th of July and what you all envision for a 4th of July celebration. We talked a little bit about it on Wednesday. We need to get into the specifics a little bit because there's going to be guidelines, and we've invited Albemarle Regional Health into our planning meeting next week because of the virus concerns that normally aren't part of that planning.
I have another question. Under the rent wellhead weddings, so you don't anticipate any of that dropping off?
We normally take in a little more than that, and so we left it where it was because we anticipate that we'll still have weddings, and we actually have had a couple people reschedule their weddings for.
I think 6 have been canceled so far. 6 have been canceled so far, but I think a couple of those 6 were rescheduled.
And the ones that have been canceled so far are ones that are actually in the current fiscal year.
Right,
so the anticipation is that
next year.
Yeah.
Right,
So the anticipation is that weddings that are occurring next year, assuming that we go to a group of 50 and then in June go to more than 50, would probably be able to happen at Wellhead.
So none of them for the next fiscal year canceled?
I don't think they've canceled yet. No, ma'am.
No, I think there was at the sheriff's office because, like I said, the deputies, we have to have somebody assigned to it.
Yeah,
I think the ones from July on, like you said, in the next budget, they're all still on.
Yeah, so May and June, May we had to cancel some of them, and then in June we've had a couple already voluntarily canceled. One of those I think did reschedule, though.
Yeah,
and we're seeing some move to the fall that were going to be in the spring.
Yeah, they're adjusting accordingly. Well, as we're going through revenue, tour operator permits.
So yeah, so tour operator permits. This is something that that I think Commissioner Jarvis had asked to have a discussion around at budget time. What you see there, those are the permits that we collect for the horse tours. We've had a request from several of the companies, and I'll just go ahead and say this, not from Chairman White's company, but from some of his competitors actually to look at doing something with those fees because of the fact that they've been shut down for a couple of months. It is one of the only businesses that pays a permit fee to operate a business. The only other one that I can think of off the top of my head would be adult-oriented businesses. And so the question to the board is, do you all want to have a discussion around either waiving fees, postponing fees?
When can they start having the tours based on the governor's May 22nd?
We're still waiting for some guidance on that. I mean, so right now, May 22nd is when we'd anticipate
That they could
they'd be
start-
able to.
Okay.
You know, the question becomes, will they have a? I don't think that the comments we've gotten from some of the businesses are they don't know how their operation's going to be impacted because you're in close quarters sometimes with folks that you aren't vacationing with, and
And that's
so
going to be the same with restaurants or anybody else down there.
Horse tour, hay rides.
so. So like I said, that's really it's really a question for the board. I mean, from a staff perspective,
And normally they have to pay these in May, correct?
yes, ma'am.
But
Yep.
they typically, April's probably not a bad month.
You're right.
Yeah.
We haven't made any money really since October of last year because obviously it's a seasonal business. But I'm losing about 40%, 35 to 40% of my income comes out of April and May, and that's not. And for me, from a business standpoint, I don't know how many people want to go. You know, if a restaurant loses 50%, they don't have these fees to pay. We're the only industry that pays what will be an exorbitant fee this year to be in business. So I don't have a way to project what we'll do business-wise, you know, going forward. It could be as much as a 50% reduction. If we can't put people on trucks, then we literally
Is this
can't
something
make
we
money.
could come back to in the fall and prorate or discuss
Well,
then?
We staff would like some direction. I mean, technically, we are obligated to charge the fees
Ordinance,
now.
we have to. Yeah.
So we would like some guidance as to what the board would like to do with those fees for
Let me ask you,
May.
since we're in a state of an emergency, can we temporarily suspend them for right now while we're in the state of emergency without going through an ordinance
I
change?
believe in a declaration of emergency, you can suspend certain ordinances. A good example of that statewide is that, you know, inspections on vehicles and registrations on vehicles have been pushed back. Income tax filing deadlines have been pushed back by
That way
executive
we wouldn't have
order.
to change the ordinance or anything.
Correct. Correct.
Owen, you look like you're going to say
I
something.
definitely think it needs to be prorated. They certainly shouldn't have to pay for April and May when they had no business.
We collect everything up front, right? What if we just say a certain amount now, a third, and then depending on how the year works out, adjust it then?
I would, okay, my suggestion then would be let's suspend it through with the state of emergency allows us to. Let's suspend it for 90 days or so? And then, or after the emergency, and then let's see how businesses as a whole are picking up. And then we can make a decision at that point whether to prorate it or suspend it or do an ordinance. I mean, that's a suggestion from me.
Would you want them to back pay, say in 90 days?
Well, that's why I say prorated based on maybe look at, you know, what they've, you know, how the business model is going for them is, and then look at an adjustment or determine, you know, if they had no business, a little bit of business, or they had 90% of the business come back in 90 days through the summertime, we would probably get a better feel. Would you say that?
Where I'm at. Yeah.
Like you said, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not, I mean, if they can't by law be open, like Commissioner White said, and they can't, you know, I mean, you're going to have to pay, and you can't be open for 60 days when, you know, I'm sure March probably wasn't a big, but April, May probably hurt.
The and like I said, from the operators that sent emails to staff, and I think maybe Leanne forwarded one or two of those onto the board.
Yeah.
The other concern was, you know, they don't even know really how business is going to be, and like Commissioner Payment was saying, I mean, that's true for a lot of businesses that are based on tourism economy, but
But in 90 days, that whole Outer Banks business model should give us a good idea of what's happened through the summer.
And I would expect for our state of emergency to roll on for quite a while, just because of the fact that as long as we're in a state of emergency, there are certain expenses that potentially are FEMA reimbursable if it's directly related to the pandemic. So we probably wouldn't do away with the state of emergency anytime in the near future, is my guess. Now, our new state of emergency doesn't have any restrictions. It just says we're in a state of emergency. But, we could go back in, modify that, amend it, and essentially say that this item can be pushed out for, 90 days.
Pushed out or prorated. I mean, like I said, if they're not open for 2 months, it's
Well, what
it's
I read-
literally like, taking advantage of, any of those guys. Like I said, if you can't open for 2 months, and I'm sure April with the holidays, Easter and stuff like that would be good times that they would generate good revenue. It's not fair for them to have to pay, or any other business that has to pay fees if they can't open.
My recommendation would be to delay the payment, and then if you wanted to prorate it, do that through an official ordinance change.
Are we going to prorate it for each tour operator or just in general? You might have one person say, well, my business, I only had 20% of what I normally have, and then somebody else says, well, I did 50%.
I don't think you could do it per business, because then
Yeah.
you're looking at how the restaurants do too. It
Yeah.
just depends. If the volume is there and the business is there, I guess now it comes down to how you promote your business or who wants to go to it.
Very true.
It is. That goes to the
Can
operations
we-
then.
Delay it?
Through a state of emergency, I believe you
Because
can.
we can't do property taxes, because we had some people say they wanted their property taxes reduced since they couldn't
So-
rent their homes.
Property taxes are set, though, under state statute, whereas this is a local ordinance. So I think that's the difference. You have an authority to set this kind of local permit and fee, whereas property taxes, the state doesn't grant you the authority to make but certain exceptions on property taxes.
And like I said, we're not going to be dismissing it. We'd go through a delay phase right now, and then we'll assess where we need to be at after about 90 days.
All right, so we'll draft and I'll get with Ike and we'll draft some language for the state of emergency to push that deadline back and get that signed, and then we'll address it and take a look at where the economy's at. 90 days, is that what the board?
90 days from today.
Is that August 1st somewhere?
We can make it August 1st, yeah. So that would be, well, actually that'd be September 1st.
Yes, that's fine with me.
September sounds good.
Okay. All right. Any
Staying
other
good on it.
What?
I'm staying on it.
Any other questions on revenue? Okay. As far as tourism promotions, not a ton of changes. We've always had the understanding in Currituck County that, and it was really based around a hurricane, but if any kind of disaster occurred that cut into OCTAX, we've always maintained a very healthy fund balance in our promotions line, so that we would be able to maintain our marketing and promotions at the same level, because the last thing you want to do when you have potentially something that deters visitors from coming to your area is to cut your marketing budget, essentially. So there are not any big cuts in the promotion budget. We didn't really trim much out at all.
Because normally we have a carryover every year in the promotional
do.
budget, and the fireworks falls into the promotional budget,
It
which
does.
a lot of people I think are confused out there about how that's being funded.
Yeah, it's funded through OCTAX and through the promotions line, because it is it's something that draws. It's for visitors, by and large. It happens at Wellhead, which in the summertime. Now, residents are welcome to drive around to go see it or to go on a boat and go see it, but where it's based out of is your predominant audience is going to be visitors.
And that funding for those fireworks cannot be used for any other purpose in the general fund or helping the economy,
Correct.
because some people think that money should be spent out there which we can't. We can't do that legally.
The only other thing you could spend it on is other tourism promotions.
Yes.
So yeah, that would so you could spend it on more ads. You could spend it on more in social media messaging, things like that. But it could not be spent on. For instance, it couldn't be spent on buying a vehicle for the sheriff's office, or buying air packs for a fire department. So,
One of the line items in here was promotion grants. Is that the grant assistance program? That's under operations.
I think promotional efforts is where we put that in. I think it'll be rolled up under promotional efforts next year.
Okay.
What's
That was the
promotional grant?
We
$100,000.
created the line and put it in this year, but I think we decided next year just to put it under promotional efforts.
Got it.
Like Ms. Key said, what's the promotional grants?
That was for this year.
For this, okay.
So we put it there this year to track it, but next year we just rolled it into promotional efforts.
Efforts. I got you.
But don't you think it's a good idea to track it to see if the programs?
We still track it. The way that we break down in Munis, it breaks down into individual journal entries. And if the board wants, we can move it there. I mean, that's not an issue.
I like seeing it.
Okay.
I like to see if it's.
So we make a note. We'll move the.
Leave it where it is under promotional
Okay.
grants.
Yeah, you said you don't want to cut your promotion, you need to boost it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we
let's
got-
take that up to $250,000.
Because we go back to, I think it was 2008, when things were going down, we boosted our internet marketing, and compared to Dare County that year, we were down less than half of what they were.
So I mean, if the board wants, we can add. So do you have the fund balance broken out by promotions versus? If you don't, I've got it. So what Sandra's going to scroll through real quick. The fund balances that you see there is tourism promotion. So what we're projecting is tourism promotions has got a fund balance at the start of this fiscal year of $8.3 million. So we've got a healthy fund balance. We're projecting that at the start of next fiscal year it'll be 9.086.
Okay.
That's pretty healthy.
So I mean we can definitely pull more money out if you all would like to put an extra million into promotions. We could do that. I mean, they may or may not spend it. I mean, because the other side of that is we got to have enough staff to buy ads and create content and that kind of thing. But
Well, that's the ads. We've got so many produced now. I don't think it's a big
Yeah.
deal for them to put this ad out.
Yeah.
I mean,
But-
they're already creating ads for this particular situation. And
so this will be the only point in our budget discussions that I'll tell you I'm comfortable taking more out of fund balance. And the reason is that it is very restricted what we can use it on. Like Owen was saying, this is a time when marketing's important.
I would spend.
With
Wanna be the lead
with
guy.
The way this
I'd have
season's
no
been,
problem
I'd
spending
say
$1 million.
right, spending more, try to get the, yes.
I would say put it in there,
Okay.
and if you need it, it's there.
Right.
And if you
Instead
don't
of
need
trying
it-
to come in with a
We
budget
can always put it
amendment.
back in reserve. We don't need it, but it's right now. Right now is when we want to be just blowing up the internet with digital marketing, trying to get people to book, get them here, get them thinking about a vacation. So, yeah, if we take an extra $1 million and move it over, I'd go.
We
Cameron, go.
could say Dare County has put up a COVID checkpoint at the bridge. It's not allowed to the Outer Banks.
But I think it is important that we let people know that we're welcoming them into our county.
Oh,
And tourism has done a lot about messaging that.
reminds me, we had a discussion yesterday about digital signs. The sheriff's department has the one at Crawl Line.
Okay.
Maybe we could snag that today and bring it over
Yep.
and set it up and say, welcome back, we miss you, or something.
it'll be done at
the
midnight
county
tonight.
line. They won't need it anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, they can
Yeah.
pull it out this afternoon, and they got the big
Yeah.
other thing.
I'll get up with the sheriff.
Have to look and see if the DOT sign says Dare County welcomes you.
Right.
It does.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Hey, and we need,
Probably.
Well, that is another
They always
question.
tell you how many miles to Dare County.
yeah,
Well, it might
we could
be,
do an ad.
it might not be a bad idea actually to reach out to DOT and see if we could get them to put something up like the Outer Banks.
Well, I'll reach out to them. Sandra just pointed out she noticed today it's been up there for so long. I don't think any of us that come from the south end of the county notice it anymore. The one in Coin Jock coming north says stay home. But it's because residents are encouraged to stay home.
Does.
The one at Sligo is access to Dare County
Yeah.
is restricted.
We
Yeah.
could do maybe a commercial or something and have like a family not put a nasty note on a car or something, come visit
Well, I was-
Currituck, we love you.
I was thinking, like I said the other day, get you to have a sign, put you in a wild goose costume and stand there like a wild goose.
I thought we had discussed.
I don't think that's in his job description, but
Other duties is assigned.
I thought we had said we wanted one at the Welcome Center and one also at
Yeah.
the
We did.
line from Dare County.
I thought it was in Corolla.
Grove,
Yeah.
Corolla, Corolla.
Yeah, not like it down at the Wright Memorial, but up, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
On the line, Currituck line.
yeah.
We could put one at the bridge, make a left for.
oh,
your
just
location.
stop.
So the one for the sheriff, we can actually just change that messaging since it's already at the line.
Put Kevin in a boat.
Well, yeah, it needs to be flipped the other way.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we can get one at the state line and
Yep.
one coming in and one in the Corolla, yep.
How
that'd
many
be
do we
great.
have total?
Well, I think we've got 2 that function.
Two to function, and then we bought the ones for the pickup trucks.
Let me ask you
gave the
something.
county
Did-
one, and
Would buying a
don't know if they
promotional
ever put
sign
'em in the
qualify
truck.
under the promotions? Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, there we go. We could
Yes.
have 5.
There you go.
I can't get one by tomorrow.
No, but I mean, you know what? If we're going to need them in the future, let's.
Dan
look
could have
into that.
gotten it by tomorrow.
Thanks, Paul.
Oh,
Oh.
Paul's not getting lunch.
So that's
we didn't miss you yesterday, Paul. Just saying. Sorry.
you mean Wednesday?
Wednesday.
so we'll add an extra $1 million into promotions, and then
We need to be aggressive.
I
I
think,
mean,
yeah, go all
Okay.
out.
we want the OC tax and the sales tax.
110% in.
Yeah, and I don't know why we
Bring
wouldn't
it.
want to look at maybe getting a sign and keep it for when, any events or anything we need for promotions. Let's just get it and keep it.
well, like I said, we have a couple that we can use. So, any other questions then on promotions expenditures?
Like you said, and we're not, I mean, so people understand, because, social media, that money is tourism driven, that has to be spent on tourism, just to reiterate that.
It's even more specific than that.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That
Just to-
money is specifically statutorily bound to only be spent on the promotion of tourism, not on tourist-related items, but actually on the promotion of tourism.
Thank
So it's actually more narrow than just on tourism. It
Yes.
has to be to attract people to our destination. So
Thank you.
And there's been, there's always been talk since it started about having it adjusted to where we could put it into the general fund. And every time we ever went and asked, don't touch it because they'll put all of it into tourism promotion.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, there's some senators have been trying to snatch that tourism
for
dollars
years.
from us to use it somewhere elsewhere.
So there's the only other thing I know of out there, and it came through in the legislation that the state of North Carolina passed. Buncombe County got special dispensation
Yep.
in that act to use their occupancy tax funds to fund essentially small business grants. There was some talk about actually, at least for this year, removing the restriction on occupancy tax and allowing it to be used for other things. I think Buncombe County, though, had already
They did some grant
had
writing,
that system in place, and so basically somebody just added that into the bill that was the larger.
I had a conversation with Bobby about that too. That maybe he could look at changing the word to all counties, so that why not? Why not help businesses promote and get whatever dollars you can out of them at this time through a grant program? So,
And the General Assembly, I think, goes back in session next week.
yeah.
So I mean, I'm sure there's going to be other
there's another package coming.
other
through.
packages, coming down. So, I mean, it could be that some of that large fund balance can be used in other ways eventually, but for right now, it is specifically required to be used for tourism promotions. That portion of OCTAX.
Yep. Well, we can't pick winners and losers, but we could grant.
So,
some advertising dollars to.
With what was said, what if we moved?
Their advertising budget, which puts more in their operating.
We'll probably also add about $50,000 into capital outlay for promotions, because if we were going to buy like a sign, it would actually come from capital outlay. because it's something that's depreciable. It's more than $5,000, so
Okay.
it actually would need to come from that line.
Okay.
Any other questions on promotions? All right, so we'll move on to tourism-related expenses. So these are items such as the two big kind of ticket in here are the extra public safety things that occur for the sheriff's office, EMS, where that money is, and you won't see it actually in here. It's in a transfer, but that is a tourism-related expense. We did make some pretty substantial cuts to tourism-related items. The largest one that you're going to see, we had programmed money in next year to do the stabilization of the historic jail, which is next door. The estimate on that was about $400,000 just to stabilize it, so we pulled that money out. And that's where we saw a bulk of the savings on tourism related. There are some other items that you'll see in there. So another big ticket item that's still in there. The two big ticket items are contracted services. You'll see that's the shoreline stability study, and the beach services is the lifeguard contract. When this first got started, I did reach out to that contractor and said, listen, just be aware, I don't know how this is going to work if we can't have visitors in. We don't necessarily need lifeguards. Obviously, that's resolved itself because of the fact that, we've got visitors coming in before that contract actually kicks off, which is Memorial Day weekend.
Okay, Ben, so after we reevaluate October, November, December, whatever, and we discover that businesses or the occupancy tax was better than we had assumed, would we then look at putting that money for the jail back in there to get it stabilized at that point?
There's a couple of things that we would look at putting the money back in for. That would be one of them. Do you have the other capital projects, or is... Like walkovers and that kind of thing? Yeah.
Because, that jail, those cracks are getting kind of big over
Well,
there.
that's why we had programmed in the money for next year. We were going to prioritize that as a capital spend. The other thing that was in there was the refurbishment of walkovers. We've replaced planks this year just to kind of get through, but we had
already,
kind of...
by the way, gotten positive feedback
Good.
on the improvement.
Good. Our plan was to actually do a full rebuild of 3 each year, because some of them actually need to be kind of relocated a little. Some of them, the base structure needs to be replaced. So there's some capital items such as jail stabilization and that would add back in when we reevaluate. So.
Is it going to be, if we put off the jail, is it going to be worse? Because I'm like Mike, it's really...
It'll get worse, but it won't cost that much more money. The way that the issue is, and if engineering was here, they could explain it a lot better, and I'm getting ready to explain it. The size of the gap isn't the issue. It's I guess there used to be a top floor that was removed, and when that happened, it started to kind of...
So by waiting, we're not creating any more issues to the jail.
I don't want to say that.
Okay,
I'm saying it's not more expensive. That's what I'm saying.
Well, that's okay. That
I can't guarantee you that if a hurricane comes through in October, the jail doesn't blow over.
Unbelievable.
I'm sure Dan could. I'm not willing to make... because it's getting worse. That's why we prioritized that project in the budget before the pandemic. But so if you look up here, this is the money that was programmed for the... I'll walk through the capital that was tourism related. A skid steer is one of them, and that was to help out the public works staff that are over there whenever they have to grade beach accesses or bury whales. It says dead animals, but it's whales. You've got a work truck that was removed.
Now, is that a skid steer on tracks?
It has to be.
Yeah, I would think it would have to be on tracks.
Yeah, it is. It has to be over there.
Yeah.
If not,
You can't hardly buy them on wheels anymore.
And then this one we left in. This was to paint the Jarvisburg Historic Colored School, because it is in
It's been a while.
Yeah, it needs it. So if you don't do that one, then you are going to have a lot of costly expenses in future years. So So those are all things that have been cut out. So if you'll scroll down to the fund balance. And then, well, hold on, we'll do wellhead next. Wellhead stayed pretty much the same because it's operating cost. I mean, there's not a whole lot of things to trim out of the wellhead budget at this time.
Speaking of like the wellhead and all that stuff, like far as, and I know, I mean, are the public restrooms going to be open for all that stuff first thing tomorrow morning? Corova Beach access.
We have planned on opening the public restrooms. So now there's going to be signage, letting, I mean, we're not going to be able to clean it after everybody goes into it. I mean, that's just, we don't have the capabilities of doing that, which.
What is this?
Nobody does. I mean, go to Home Depot, they're not cleaning the bathroom after
Yeah.
that. The reality is you wash your hands and you leave. So,
So,
right. Hopefully. Hopefully people are doing that now. If they're not,
The
If
door
not,
handle
it's
to
a law
somebody else
enforcement
who
issue.
didn't wash their hands.
Well, then you use hand sanitizer when you get back to your car,
Right, so
too.
Ben and I had some discussion about this, but we have to have them open for the tourists that are there, obviously, and there is no perfect solution. And and hopefully the last thing you do, like I said, is wash your hands when you leave. And people have hand sanitizers and those things, and they're going to go lay out and get some vitamin D. So
Maybe
does
we
the
need
state-
to stick a sign up at the door, please wash your hands.
Oh, geez, right, hope so. What is the state doing with their the rest areas? Are they're open now?
the rest areas are open, the welcome centers are not. And so we are basing our welcome center operations on state welcome centers.
Okay.
So public restrooms would be open, but the welcome centers would not be at the same operational level they are. I would imagine this is me guessing, but I think that when the state goes to phase 2, which has kind of been hinted at that it'll be May 22nd, that the welcome centers will start to reopen. And we can get into,
that's
operationally, the staff here will start to come back in once we enter phase 2.
That's just something else. I'm glad you said that. I went over yesterday and got my parking passes, and they had a table set up, and they were checking people in. And if at all possible, we need to get them some tablets or something, because they take the information, get up, go inside, get on the computer, do the tax, come back out, and so it's going to. If we have any floating around that they can use for the time being, I think it would assist them greatly on getting up, going in.
I know we've got laptops.
Yeah, something to
Air
help.
card.
Air card.
So the issue is, and Sandra brought this up, it's the air card.
Yeah.
So they need air cards. The issue is, and I've got to call Mark Stefani.
Are they hardwired in over there, or will they be Wi-Fi?
It's
like
not
a-
why. They have to have air cards because the internet is not.
Reliable.
Yes. So the air cards that they had an air card that they were using. Right now, a teacher is
school.
using it to teach students.
Mm-hmm.
So, because when everything started,
Right.
we loaned approximately 6 or 7 air cards
Yeah.
to the school system in order to help them get through. Now, I got an email yesterday. So once we get done with this meeting, a phone call will be made to Mark Stefanik and say, hey, I need my air card back.
Yeah.
Unless anybody else has got an air card they're not using.
I gave mine
We
up.
should begin the process of getting them all back.
Okay.
Well, anyway, so whatever we can do to help them out. It's not busy right this second, but it's getting ready to be, and especially Corolla is probably small enough to actually, I don't know if they have Wi-Fi there or put a booster in, but they could probably pick up Wi-Fi sitting outside the front door. It's not that big of a space, right?
I think that they have issues, though, with reliability of internet over there.
You guys must be on.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's one of the.
Spectrum.
And Sandra can speak to that a lot more than I can.
Yeah,
but
the problem is, she reprimanded me.
Yes. We get it often. Welcome to the
Anyway,
club.
the
I don't think
prob-
you're turned on.
The problem is that,
Are you green?
no. Okay,
How your business?
we'll try that now. The problem is, we have iPads, and we talked about taking the iPads that we use for Whalehead Wednesday or up there, and that's when we realized they had no air card, and that was about 2:00 yesterday afternoon.
Got
So
it.
That's where we're
I mean, is
trying
that
to
something we
resolve
could-
this issue.
Is that something we could get through? That'd be a tourism promotion expense.
That would probably.
to get a couple air cards from Verizon.
Well, technically, we probably would pay for that through the beach parking pass fees.
Right, because that's
The issue's not the money for that. The issue is that there's such a backlog on air cards
right.
because
Okay.
everybody is.
So, going tag teaming, I would believe it'd be easy to plug a wireless router, into the wall, which should be hardwired for internet. And if we have to, walk it out to the parking during parking passes and connect wirelessly.
Yeah, I
to
mean,
that.
we'll find a way to make it work. I mean, that's not an issue.
Like you said, make it more efficient and easy.
We
Yeah, I
just
mean-
didn't realize there was an issue until 2:30 yesterday
Right. Well,
afternoon.
I was
so now
there
we're trying
about when I was there.
to figure that out.
Right.
And
Right.
and in addition to that, the whole internet went out at the Moyoc Welcome Center about 4:00 yesterday.
Good
So they're
times.
trying to figure that part out
Okay.
too.
All right. Well,
Yeah, I don't
so-
think it's an issue to make it happen. It's
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. Whatever we can do to the system, like I said, it's just kind of it's very inefficient right this moment. They're in and out, in and out, in and out, and so.
And I'm going to say this gingerly, but hopefully the citizens understand there's going to be a lot of things, or especially tourists, I shouldn't say citizens, but tourists understand there are a lot of things that are going to be inefficient about tourist season this year. Not just from a county standpoint, but from a, it's going to be
I
a,
spent my money.
it's going to be a very different experience this year versus previous years. And so that's one of the things that we're, and, you know, those of you that have seen the commercials that they're putting together, that's one of kind of the things that they're talking about is that it is going to be a different experience. It's because of some of the challenges of the pandemic. So, but that particular issue, we can find a way to fix it.
Okay. Good enough.
Yeah.
Right.
And another thing, we did tell them, now that you can pay through PayPal, they can do it on their phone. So they weren't aware of that.
Yeah, so I think if for the visitors, it'll be much more efficient now than it previously has been because they can pay online. They show up, they just show a receipt, we give them a pass. I think what you're talking about, though, Bob, is for residents who come
Yeah,
up.
it's the residents.
And they've got to
and
check
that's
the property ownership.
Probably a couple week window right now while that's going on,
Yeah.
and then that goes away. For most of them, will have their. Actually, it'll probably all be this week. Everybody's hitting bombarding them right now because
Yeah.
a week from now they have to have them. So,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
So we'll go down to the fund balance now.
There's the new one.
So what you're going to see under fund balance, like I said, you've got promotions and related expenditures. And so you can see that our tourism-related expenditures the fund balance is much lower. You go to the column that shows what we're projecting at the start of the year versus the end of the year for next year.
Okay, this is the beginning of the year, and this is the end of the year, and this is next year. But it's a balanced budget, so.
Yeah. So you'll see a fund balance appropriation under other financing sources of $2.132 million. And you basically, it would now be 3.1 because we've added $1 million into promotions. So of that 3.12 million would be promotions and roughly 1.1 would be tourism related. So we can run promotions in a deficit for a couple of years and still be pretty comfortable. After this year, if worst case scenario happens, we will have to make some
cuts to TRE.
Yeah. And those cuts are going to, I mean, there's only a couple places to make those cuts. If we had to next, like I said, and I'm not talking about the budget we're getting ready to go into, but this is just to put this in the back of your minds when we get together this time next year. The only couple of places to make those cuts are at your major expense points, which is the transfer to the operating fund, which is basically to cover sheriff and EMS salaries that we staff up because of our tourism population increase. The other one would, I mean, it's the
Lifeguards.
lifeguard contract.
That's
I mean, it's
$900,000 this
yeah,
year?
it's $1 million, or by next year it's like 890 some thousand.
Yeah.
So those are,
Yeah, I don't think that would be good to be jumping the money up for the promotions for come to our beaches and then, I mean, but like you said, I don't,
Well, we're
it's
not
not,
there.
it's not going to happen.
We're not there yet.
I know, we're not there. It's
we're not
gonna
there. I
happen.
just, like I said, it's,
Well, and then,
yeah, I mean, that's just to
Clean,
keep that in
safe
mind.
beaches.
There you go.
clean. We'll go
So
with clean.
any,
Clean.
Spacious.
any questions on the TDA budget?
Nope.
All right.
Ben, you've got this new maritime budget in there.
Oh, yeah.
Maritime Museum.
Yep, so that's the operational cost proposed right now for the Maritime Museum. That number probably will end up being higher. Right now, we're planning on trying to cover the cleaning of that facility with staff we already have. But next year, we would only need somebody for the first or the last quarter. So it won't actually be open
Right.
until the last quarter.
If we're lucky.
Scheduled is what, November?
Still
November
having the issue getting delivered, or have they
Not anymore. I mean, well, that
Logistic-
facility got it still delivered. It had an issue. So I think we're looking at May opening date now on that facility. But it wouldn't surprise me for that to push back some. I mean, with supply chain being what it is, and I've got to make a call to actually the contractor on that in the public safety building just to have a conversation about where everything's at as far as time frame. So this budget is the service district for the roads in Corova Beach. If you remember, we put a tax in place last year. We also were going to pull in some funding from tour operators, and then we were going to transfer some money in from OCTAX. And so basically, it was about $90,000. And that's a ballpark number.
Which sheet are we on?
Sorry, I went to a different tab. Corova Beach.
Beach tab.
Got it.
Right here.
It just,
Now, if the tour operator funds come in lower, then we'll need to make a budget amendment and reduce this budget, because about a third of the budget for that service district was coming from tour operator fees. But we still have the occupancy tax at 30, and you can see that the property tax brings in roughly 28,000
Those numbers were not adjusted.
for.
COVID.
We took 100
No.
out.
Okay, all right.
We had an extra 100 in there originally.
But that was a one-time.
kind of a shot in the arm. Right?
Yeah, and the plan for next year, and that 100 has been removed. But the plan for next year for that 100 was initially to use it for opening up some of the pedestrian walkovers that are in the four-wheel drive area,
That aren't as in good a shape.
or that are non-existent right now.
Yeah.
We have to build them.
What brought the contracted services up again?
Contracted services, all that is the roads. So the reason it's higher this year is, if you remember, we took, and I can't remember the miles off the top of my head, I think it's 8 more miles of road, but that number might be off.
Okay.
And we were going to get it into good shape this year, and then going forward, that money was going to be used to maintain. That 100,000 that went to Corova last year or this year for the roads, next year was going to either go to pedestrian walkovers or basically just cutting paths for pedestrians, or it was going to go to potentially to bring roads up to standards in the Swan Beach district if that moved forward. Because of the pandemic and the public hearing requirements that we weren't going to be able to meet, we had to put that project on hold. But so that money is not in the budget right now, that 100,000. That's another thing that when we reevaluate, we could add back in. And because the Swan Beach Service District could not come to fruition, I'd recommend that we use it for doing pedestrian access points in the four-wheel drive area. The community up there had concerns because right now vehicular and pedestrian access are over the same accesses, and there are some narrow ones specifically for pedestrians on the plat. We got a
safety
lot to
issues.
work through before we do that because we got to get permission to open them up from the developer. But
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah,
Okay.
all right.
Which tab now?
Operating, revaluation, or land banking?
Let's do land banking. This is basically a fund that we maintain if the county wants to purchase land, strategic land. We add $200,000 to it every year. You know, it comes out of transfer tax. We've kept that the same. Transfer tax is going to be down, but we cut some of our other capital expenditures to make up for that. Transfer tax, all it's really trying to cover for next year is debt service for public safety and land banking. So, and some minor capital stuff that Public Works has around, and we'll get into that in operating budget, but it's repairs that have to be made. We've cut any Public Works projects to just the have-tos, not the good idea tos.
What's the land banking? Far as that, those funds, we've been doing that since what, 2008 years?
I'm gonna look at Sandra.
It's been a long time.
Been
And
a
when's the
long
last-
time.
When's the last time we've?
Years.
When's the last time we've?
Well,
Acquired.
we're going to spend some out of it once we finally close on the land at Panther Landing for the Moyoc transfer station, or convenience site, excuse me.
That's still being farmed this year too, because
It
they were
is.
farming it yesterday
It is.
and today.
It is.
I asked about that.
Yeah, so right now it's still under their ownership. We'll let it stay under their ownership. We're working through stormwater plans, so it's part of the subdivision stormwater plan. We've got to get it separated out from the subdivision stormwater plan because we need it under our stormwater plan since it's going to be owned by us and maintained by us.
Thank you.
Let's go to yeah, we can talk about.
This one's pretty fast.
Yeah, so this is basically money that we are obligated to put aside for revaluations. So we budget, so that when we come to a reval, we've got the money to do it. You're statutory obligated to save your money for your reval. We do one every 8 years. It'll finish up next fiscal year. So as we roll into fiscal year 2022, you all will get a report about what has happened with property values in Currituck County. And then get a report as to what revenue neutral is for the tax rate, and then we'll have a discussion at budget time next year of what the tax rate will be. With what's going on, I'm not even going to offer a guess as to what property values are going to do through the reappraisal, because I think it'd be,
A little premature.
yeah,
So they'll be done probably in September, probably, or?
somewhere between September and November in that time frame.
Before
They've been working on it.
Before the pandemic, they were.
Mm-hmm.
They were rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Let's do.
Revenues.
Yeah, let's do
Which one?
Is there any
revenues.
interest in maybe going to every 4 years on reval? With the technology we've got now, the tax office could actually do it just by doing comparables. And because the thing about 8 years now, with the wild fluctuations we're getting, it hits people
Right.
unexpectedly. I know.
Well, it either hits the people, it either hits citizens unexpectedly, or it hits the county unexpectedly, depending on where in that cycle.
Somebody's getting a surprise.
Yeah.
The theory was when they did it 8 years that it would level out over
Yeah.
that period of 8 years. You'd have high cycles and low cycles.
There's nothing to say. I mean, the only rule is you have to do it every 8 years. You can do it as frequently as you want to.
I know. I think it's Mecklenburg that might do it every year or every 2 years.
They-
2 years. I want to say they do it every 2 years.
They do. I wouldn't recommend that just because.
No,
That's cost involved to do all that. Yeah.
They
Um,
use it for $1 million to do it.
Yeah.
but I mean that's bringing the firm in. I'm talking about using the technology. We got the tax office could do it.
So so here's my only guidance on that is I've worked for a county that did it every 4 years, and they still brought in an outside firm to do it.
I would think if the county is appraising people's property, that the appearance might be the county's in a bind, will jack your property value up and get you on the backside.
Well, that's definitely, there's a perception issue. There's also a manpower issue, and the fact that I think, well, like Mecklenburg County, you know, they do it every 2 years. I think they used a lot of in-house people to do it. And I don't know if you all followed it 6 years ago now, but they had to refund, I forget how many millions of dollars in property taxes.
Yeah, but with
4 years, I think that might make sense, but I still think you got to bring in an
Has
outside
some market
firm to.
fluctuations. Yeah.
Well, you're going to get a lot. I mean, the way the construction is going on, we're getting a lot of new buildings, and those values are going to stay pretty consistent for a while.
So the values, I would imagine here, the values that you see that have the most instability are probably the ones on the Outer Banks. I mean, the ones on the mainland probably change some, but I would imagine your Outer Banks properties, and that's what I've seen looking at the data that from previous revals, is that there's these wild swings on the Outer Banks. And so I think in 2000, the last reval, they were really low. The reval before that, they were really high.
Yeah, we joked that we should put a notice on the front of the envelope. If you have heart issues, take your medication before opening this.
So, it costs more to do it every 4 years. It does help smooth some of those fluctuations out, but
I just wonder what the cost would be, and just see, a projection on it. Because it wouldn't be, I don't think, as intensive if you did it every 4 years.
we can reach out and see what that cost looks like.
And if the market value is increasing steadily, it would catch that value
Yeah.
sooner.
So any other reval questions, concerns? So the next tab that we're going to go to is our revenue estimates. Expecting some increase in property tax revenues and more properties being built at a rate faster than we anticipated a year ago. So that revenue actually has gone up a little bit more than we kind of predicted in the 2-year budget. The big change in this budget to revenue is going to be under your other taxes and licenses, and it's going to be under the sales tax.
You expect that's a big,
It's a 40%.
good Lord.
40%.
Okay.
And Ben, how did you arrive at that? Just out of curiosity, how did you arrive at a 40% decrease?
So we reached out. The bulk of our sales tax is the bulk of our sales tax is
I can't see squat.
Okay.
So don't point at it.
2_4 revenue estimate details.
Got it.
It's like 3 in
Give me-
front of TD.
give me one
Got
second.
it.
Now go over to.
Scroll up.
So the bulk of the sales tax generated in Currituck County is driven by tourism. We reached out after the pandemic started at the end of March, 1st of April, to the larger management companies that handle rentals in Currituck County and asked them what they were projecting for their occupancy reduction. Their projection was 40%. And so we used that number to estimate a sales tax reduction of 40% as well.
Okay.
But Wendy's is bringing that sales tax in left and right in Moyoc.
Propping up the county. Propping up the
That drive-through line is packed.
And like I said, I mean, and we spoke about this on Wednesday. I'm going to give you all the worst case scenario in a budget. I mean, that's my job is to be as
Right.
fiscally conservative as I think possible because of the different things going on. I guess I that's just how I believe a manager should be. I mean, I think I'm gonna estimate a worst case scenario, and then as we've talked about, if best case scenario happens and we get to December and the money's higher than I anticipated, then we can talk about adding stuff back in. 'Cause like I said, it's a lot easier to add it back in than it is to get halfway into a year and then start trying to find a 40% reduction. So,
And sales tax has a 3-month lag for us, so
Yeah.
we don't get June until September. So we won't get
Which
July
is-
through September until December.
Which is the reason I've kind of said that, we can address it in December and see where we're going to have a much better idea. So then as we go through with the unrestricted intergovernmental, or it's a very minor amount of money, but it's other revenue that we have come in. Restricted intergovernmental, these are monies that come in but have to be spent a certain way. So you're going to see a lot of money that comes in there for DSS, human services, that kind of stuff. And so that money can only be spent a very specific way.
Is under restricted intergovernmental, is the ABC funds underneath that column? Because
No, the
that-
ABC profits come in
because
separate from that.
Okay, because that is restricted. It's got to be spent towards educational purposes.
Well, let me back up. Some of the money that comes in has to be spent that way, but whenever the profits come in, Sandra, can you go to that real quick? So right here you see miscellaneous. We got the education distribution, which has to be spent on education,
Okay, there it is.
but and law enforcement has to be distributed there, but the profits can be spent anywhere in the budget. Now, having said that, the profits for ABC are going to go to pay to build the ABC store.
Yes.
And those stores have been very busy lately.
So that's where that'll go. So
There's no decline during the pandemic.
scroll back up to where
Never is.
the restricted intergovernmental, like I said, it's money that's going to flow typically through the federal or state government. Permits and fees are just what they say, permits and fees. The big one there, and I'm trying to find it on the list, is building permits. So we had planned on increasing building permit fees to be able to cover the cost of inspections, because all inspections does is inspect things that have permits, so it should be a user pay system. So you'll see that the initial estimate was $600,000. I took it up to $1 million before COVID with the anticipation of increasing the fees. I have reduced it back down to $550,000. This is probably the reduction that I lack the most confidence in. I don't know that building is going to slow down. My concern is that if people are unemployed and loans can't be processed because proof of employment can't occur, that you're going to end up with
It's a time lag on that catching up.
yeah. So I shot low on that because I just have some concerns. I still recommend increasing the fees. I mean, we'll go over the master fee schedule, but my recommendation is still to increase the fees so that we can
Covers
capture
the cost of
the true cost of doing the work.
the inspection.
And just because I don't think that's something that property taxes or other taxes should go to subsidize, I think that
User pay.
yeah.
Yeah.
But like I said, that's a pretty hefty decrease. That's one I'll be up front I might really miss, but it just
It seems like right now the construction is going strong.
it is.
It's not missing a beat right now.
I know it's not.
Some real estate agents I've talked to say they've been as busy as they've
Yes.
ever been.
My neighbor's house was listed, and it was sold in 48 hours. He has a contract.
Like I said, I'm not doubting that right now that's happening, but
6 months from now.
yeah, that's my concern. This is a budget where I'm
Yeah.
projecting out, like I said, what I think could be worst case, and I'll be up front. I was in local government through the 2008 recession, and you don't get a lot of notice that that's going to stop. It just turns
It
off.
just stopped. Right.
I mean, the spigot just stops. So that it's just me being extra careful. So if there is a revenue that, like I said, though, I think probably has the best likelihood of coming in over where I've got it, it's this one. If the fees are increased, if the fees aren't increased, then you're still going to end up around that number, because we generated, 634,000. So 600, 550 to 600,000 is probably about where you'll end up if fees stay the same. So and we do the same business we've been doing. Sales and service, I didn't make a cut to, I'm going to pull out community athletics, basically. I didn't make any cuts there yet because the leagues technically will play in next year's fiscal year. But I mean, for instance, baseball and softball is not going to occur this year. Having said that, that's not as big of an issue with the budget because we don't subsidize anything with those fees. Those fees go to cover the cost to provide the program. So what happens if you don't have a baseball, softball season, you just don't have the expenditures either. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you have to, they just balance each other out.
So the concessions then, you still feel those are going to be strong?
I think they will if we have seasons.
Or it's like you're talking about seasons like fall soccer, fall flag football,
right?
All that stuff.
Yeah.
Actually, you're showing them going up, it looks like.
Yeah, I think the estimate, that came from Parks and Recreation,
Okay.
and I think the estimate there is because the prices are going to go up a little bit.
And like I said, when they're allowed to have those again, the numbers of those, because I'm on the Parks and Rec advisory board, the numbers of those have been just steadily rising, which is a good thing.
And the other thing is concessions is based on some of the tournaments that we have as well, because we make money on concessions from those. And I'll tell you, we're getting pressure from the folks who run the tournaments. They're ready to play tournaments. So I don't think we're going to have a problem getting tournaments to come back in once
Having the ability to
actually have them.
Yeah.
No, you can't tag that kid.
And so just so you know, operationally, probably looking at the 22nd tournament starting back up, but they would start back up with under some guidelines that the state probably is going to put forward about you can't have so many kids in a dugout. So basically kids aren't waiting in the
You
dugout.
can only have one parent attend or what. No, I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
So instead of the team waiting in the dugout, the team waits with their parents around the outside when they're batting, except for maybe the person on deck and the person after them.
Oh my gosh! You can't tag the
Oh,
kid.
so the
running
team
to second base.
that's been together practicing in the dugout
That one.
all season long.
That one.
We can't have a tournament with. We have lost our blooming minds.
Explain to me, what was jail housing again?
That's
The
where
revenue from
that's where
that?
other counties pay us.
That's right.
money to house
That's right,
their
to house
inmates.
them.
If,
That's what it was,
if an
okay.
inmate, not like we don't have gang problems, thank goodness, in Currituck, but they have like in Pasquotank, if the Bloods and the Crips, for example, we get one of their inmates, they pay us to house their inmates. And
But it's not even gang issues. It's just some jails are full,
yeah,
and they literally,
Okay, that's what it was.
and they
the Iredell
send
County
them
paid
to us.
$800,000 a year to house inmates with other counties.
Wow.
So,
Bunch of criminals there, isn't there?
yeah.
Once
you
all the
can't-
offices are full.
Came from where?
So,
Send them to us.
so that's what that revenue is.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The only other revenue that, and once again it offsets, is the
Miscellaneous.
aviation fuel. I can tell you our jet fuel is taking a beating right now. Avgas is selling fine, but jet fuel, there's just nobody's flying jets because now it's starting to pick back up as people have started to let visitors come back. And I don't just mean here, but we have some jets that
There's a
stop
rule,
here
right.
going other places.
Actually, I think it's probably 50-50. Probably half our jet fuel are jets headed somewhere
Yeah.
that gas up here.
Yeah.
And if they can't get to where we're going, there's no reason to.
Yeah.
Pass up.
So we expect that to come back as restrictions are lifted in other places. Once again, though, we make money on jet fuel and on avgas, but also that correlates to the spend of purchasing the gas. So it's roughly $1 a gallon. So that doesn't shift the budget one way or another in a major way.
Yeah.
Any other questions on sales and fees? We talked about miscellaneous a little bit.
Okay, I do have a question then under miscellaneous. We had a discussion a few months back with Chief Melton and in one of our work sessions, I believe it was, about possibly looking at, or he was going to look at the filing the insurance claims for hazardous spills where we could recoup some of that money, because most insurance policies, vehicle policies, have a line item that they'll pay for hazardous spills. that nobody's collecting, I don't believe, and he was going to look in to see, I mean, that could be some additional revenues that,
And I think
don't know.
what you're referring to is, when an ambulance goes, we seek medical insurance payments.
Yes.
But when there's a car accident and we're bleeding,
we are, and we have a lot of them in
whatever.
the summer. And we're not
Yeah.
capturing that, that's money that the insurance companies will pay, but somebody's got to bill it.
yeah.
And I think
A
the
couple years
discussion
ago, we
was-
had that.
The discussion I think was around which entity needs to bill the insurance company, EMS or the fire
Okay,
department.
do we know where we're at with that?
I think from what we've talked about, I don't think it can be EMS.
It can't.
Because they don't do anything to actually mitigate the hazardous spill. So it would
Fire
need to be the
departments
fire
do.
departments who would.
Either that, or we could, or the county's, I don't know if the county staff could bill it then, and then that money could be looked at putting into the
I
department.
think it would have to actually come straight from the fire department.
Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't know where we're at. Has anybody looked into that? Do we have an answer?
I know
on
we've
that?
looked into it from an EMS side, and the issue is we don't do anything to mitigate the hazardous material.
Like fire.
'Cause we're just.
I mean, when we're looking at money to help the fire department
Yeah.
and help other agencies, that I don't know what that number could be, but it could be a chunk
Yeah,
of money.
like, I mean, last
that
year, a
could
couple
help.
years ago,
And that money could be dumped into that fund that we're talking about, apparatus funds, and let that department save and capture that money to help build and build and build.
Well, that money would never actually even come to the county if the fire department.
We'll go right to
filed
the
it.
fire department,
to
right?
go to the fire department. But like we had that hazmat spill
well,
in Grandy a
okay.
couple years ago that was terrible, and there was like everybody. I mean, there was probably a lot of revenues
Save here,
that
goes there.
could have been
So, yeah.
captured. I don't know if they were or not.
But it's
It's
money
good.
that they
It's
pay,
good.
yeah.
No, it's good money. You guys could help
Can you
chip
check
in
on that
the
and just see
future.
where we're at with that then?
Yeah, I will. But like I said, I'm pretty sure the discussions I had with Chief Melton is that the fire departments would need to be the ones to.
But we need to help the fire departments figure out
Get
the
started
best way to
with it,
do
yeah.
that and get a process in place.
Okay.
Get it together for you.
And I would suggest it would mimic what we're doing with EMS.
I'm sure it probably could. You're right.
As far as
Probably
billing
that
for
easy.
medical,
The process that they bill for medical would be billing auto insurance. So
it'll be very different
Yeah.
because our medical goes to a contractor and all they do is bill medical.
got it. Well,
But if somebody can train the staff in the fire departments on how to, because Moyoc, don't we do the billings, or we pay the bills for Moyoc right
Pay
now?
their bills,
So
but
they
we
don't
don't
ha-
do any kind of revenue collections.
Do they do any type of billings out of, do they have staff up there that could do that? I don't even know.
Well,
Well-
they pay a bookkeeper.
Okay.
The issue I think I don't know that we've got staff that knows how to file a claim against somebody's auto insurance because what we do internally for EMS is we've got a billing company that basically files our medical procedures and stuff that we do with the health insurance or Medicaid or Medicare, whoever it is, for the folks. We don't actually file that under the health insurance. So then what happens?
Let's
What-
leave it.
help 'em.
Let's
What-
leave it for chief or deputy chief to try and.
There has to be a mechanism out there.
There has to
And
be.
at least
mechanism
help
out
them get, let's.
Well, you got to
let's
come
get
up with
help to
what
get
are you
started.
going to charge? I mean, what is it by the hour or?
Well, I'm sure there's probably a
Probably
rate
charge
sheet that
this
says-
rate
It's probably a
sheets.
table.
Like you said, on those
Yeah.
major hazmats, like the one we had in Grandy a couple years ago, there was the manpower and all that. It was crazy.
Oh, and the
Matter of
phone,
fact,
I
I-
guess, put down?
I had I'll have to make a call. I know somebody used to do that. They look like help keep truck spills, like big stuff, hazard mitigation, and they I have to maybe contact.
I'm
them.
gonna have Chief reach out and look into it. It's but I
But it's
don't
got
like
to be
some,
consistent from department to.
yeah. I don't know that
department.
we don't have that expertise on staff. I guess is what I'm trying to say. So we'll have to learn ourselves before we could train.
Well, I think it'd be beneficial because it's money out there waiting to be collected and we're not.
Their insurance companies probably. Well, anyway, we'll look into it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
They're not going to call us and tell us.
No, they're not.
All right, before we jump, are we done with this subject?
Let's hit transfers real quick because
Let's
there's
take
a.
quick break.
I
Let's
think
take a quick break. 'Cause
yeah, I think you're going to have to break.
break.
All right, we're back from our break. Commissioner Ward will be back in just a minute, and go ahead and continue, Ben, please.
So we'll finish up revenues. What you're going to see are the transfer from other funds into the general fund or operating fund. The number that folks kind of key in on the quickest is the fund balance. You'll see that Currituck County always budgets fund balance. We typically budget around $3 million in fund balance, and then end up actually putting about $2 million into fund balance. So that's just kind of, as I said, we always budget worst case, and then, that's kind of where it evens up. So around $500,000 would probably come out of fund balance. $500,000 to $700,000 is what we would actually pull out of fund balance. You'll see a number of $5.2 million, but if it holds like it normally does, and we've reduced revenues enough that I'm pretty comfortable with that, then we should see a similar around $5 million of less spend, or around,
Still on the revenue estimate details.
yes, under the transfers,
Very bottom.
Yeah, the other financing
other financing
sources.
sources.
Got
So
it.
to kind of summarize, essentially, what you're seeing a number 5.2, but it actually ends up in reality probably being dipping into the fund balance somewhere. I'll say $500,000 to $1 million.
Okay.
If worst case scenario comes true. The fund balance as of our current fund balance for the operating fund, Sandra's going to pull that up just so you know where it's at. And we're talking unrestricted fund balance. So we have some fund balance that has to be reserved for certain things, so you can't dip into it to do other items. And this will be our fund balance as of June 30th of 2019, because it's based on the audit.
June 2019,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the unrestricted, you said?
Mm-hmm. And like I said, normally we would add around $2 million to that number. Until we finish the year with everything that's happened, I don't know, because we will see sales tax reduction and some of that stuff in this fiscal year as well.
And you've got,
Hopefully, Mike down.
about $12 million, $12,199,631 that was unassigned, which means it wasn't committed, it wasn't restricted, it wasn't anything. You have a total fund balance of $23,580,000 as of June 30th.
That's everything.
That's everything. Now, that includes some that is restricted for governmental assets, some that's restricted for tax evaluation, some that's restricted for fire protection, and almost $3 million that's restricted in something called stabilization by state statute. That's the 8% that we usually talk about.
That's the 8% that we're required
Right.
of our
Budget.
Operating budget.
But that's not something that is set aside specifically for anything else except for to move forward into the next year in the event that your revenues fall apart.
So you've got $12 million essentially on top of the three that she was talking about, that is a rainy day fund, is kind of the easy way to
Right.
the general
Right.
public to understand
So
that.
8% of that, roughly that 5 or 43 mil, or 50, what is it?
57.
57,000 is about 4,600,000 roughly. Of the 8, that's 8%, okay.
And like I said, we would expect to add roughly $2 million on top of the number she just gave under a normal year. So I can't guarantee you that would happen this year, which is why I'd say that the number to keep in your minds would be $12 million. So like I said, looking at hopefully worst case, getting into that by about $1 million.
So it sounds like with the fund balance, we're pretty comfortable.
We are. I mean, so in theory, if the worst case scenario played out for the next 10 years, you know, and there's going to be some increases here and there and some expenditures. So let's say 6 years. I mean, you would probably be all right, but you never know what's coming. I mean, you never know when a major
Event,
Don't.
like
Event.
right now?
like now could come. Yeah, and so we'll move on to the actual expenditure side on operating, unless somebody has a question about fund balances and transfers. Transfers into operating, I should say.
Next tab over, okay.
So this is what everybody thinks of as the general fund budget. This is where the bulk of our departments expenditures are budgeted. So let's talk about what we did in the budget this year here. We've talked about it a little bit. No COLA, no new positions, not funding the salary study, and we took all of the lines that fall between telephone postage and supplies to what they actually spent in 2019.
Come again.
So we took the telephone and from telephone postage through supplies, we took it back to 2019 numbers.
Actual.
Actual.
Well, the
Well, it
actual
doesn't-
was,
It's not,
Yes.
Budget number, sorry.
yeah.
Little throwback
And there are a
Thursday.
few little caveats there. If, like, somebody's utilities was $20,000 in 2019, but in 2020, they've already spent 30,000, we didn't cut it back, because utilities you don't have a whole lot of control over. But, we did look at things like that. So there are a few, that are not that exact number, but for the most part, they are the budget number from 2019.
Capital outlay also was cut drastically. No vehicles being purchased. There's a couple of pieces of equipment we have to purchase. We'll get into that as we go through, but by and large, no major vehicle purchases. So you're going to see a lot of departments as we go through. We're going to show a reduction for next year over the budget for this year,
operational, right next to the right of what we were just on.
or not over the budget, but over the projected actual. So that's what you're seeing on the screen right now is administration. And I'm going to go through the departments. If you have questions, kind of stop me. If there's something major I want to point out, I'll jump in. So you have legal.
Yeah, I skipped over legal.
Real quick, go back to the personnel at the top up there.
On legal or on administration?
Administration, okay, so the health insurance, looks like it's gone down just a little bit.
You're going to see that in most because going to the self-insured
Okay.
reduces that number. No major changes. Keep going down. Elections went down some. You'll see that the projection actual is quite a bit higher, but it's because of some of the extra election stuff that happened. Elections may go up as we roll into if you have extra elections that occur because of something. I mean, occasionally that happens.
Yeah, and this is one of the ones, I actually went back to 2018, and there was a bigger election than 2019.
Yeah. So you see finance. Finance's projected actual is quite a bit lower than the revised budget, but a large portion of that is some lapsed salaries. You know, we're still trying to recruit an assistant finance director. IT, you're going to see a change. So let me talk about the IT budget a little bit because there's some details in here that need to be pointed out. You're going to see a reduction. Well, it looks to be a reduction, but the bulk of that reduction is because we purchased computers last year for the security. The big change, and it's one of the largest increases in the budget this year, is in software license fees. So Microsoft has changed their business model, and they are required. You can't buy Microsoft Office one time anymore. You have to pay an annual fee for Microsoft Office.
They're getting you.
So that gives us two options. We can do like we've been doing and stay with the basic suite of Microsoft Office products. But if we do that, we've got to expand our data storage because it's almost maxed out. It's called a SAN. If you really want to get in the details, I can get Logan to come give a class on it. But in the short term, you're going to have to spend a lot of capital money, or you can go to a product called Office 365, where they actually store the data for your Office. And for us, one of our big things that we end up having to store are emails and documents that come in through email. So they actually store that, so it cuts down on the capital spend we're going to have. But you can see it's a hefty increase in software license fees going to Office 365. The other thing that it does, which this wasn't planned or thought about in depth whenever this was put in there because this was done in December or January, it also gives you access to more remote work capabilities. So if we do ever have to go into a telework situation, then you've got some other tools available to you. Microsoft Teams is the platform that they use. Any questions on IT?
What's contracted services?
In IT, it's things. So Cisco. Yeah, pull it up. There you go. Without me trying to remember it, we can look it up.
Can you blow that up?
I don't think we can blow this one up, but I can read it to you. I can read it from here.
Kevin with the eagle eye can read it for us.
Read that.
So this is maintenance on the plotter. That there's maintenance on the plotter. There's
Why wouldn't it be under maintenance then?
because it's a contract.
Okay.
Company comes and does all that.
Yep. So there's a domain fee where we have to pay to have our website. Another domain fee. Another domain fee. Let's see here. So voicemail contract, the system that runs our voicemail. Tech support for development services. Web hosting, it's a yearly fee. This is a third-party warranty for our SAN. That's the data storage component. We still have to maintain a SAN because we have some things that wouldn't be hosted on that Microsoft cloud, but it frees up a lot of space.
It's not budgeted.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sandra's got her pen
All right.
out too.
So it's a lot of little contracts that add up. Human resources. Okay.
That only has salary study for this year, not next year.
Okay. So, in personnel, contracted services, that's where we budget for the salary study. There's a couple ways to handle that. Right now, it's not in the budget on anticipation that we would actually do the next study in 2 years because of the economy and the way it is. But if you all want, we can reevaluate that because what I was thinking is because of the fact we can't implement the salary study, everything would shift a year. So if we didn't implement the salary study next year, then you wouldn't be implementing the first year until FY22. So in FY22, you would study the second group.
And how much is that again, roughly?
$42,000 to have the salary study done
Okay.
And that's per group, right?
per group.
Was there less in there? I mean, is that per group? It doesn't matter if there's 80 in section one.
The number of jobs changes some, but not.
It's pretty much, it's just per.
Yeah, it'll be a little less, but you'd be better off to budget the 42, and then when it comes in under, that's fine. But so the question is, if we're, and we can get into this a little bit if you want now. We talked a little bit on Wednesday about the salary study. There's a couple of options, and the one that I'd recommend is kind of like I said on Wednesday, is looking at the salary study and the COLA and the positions and the capital in December. Look at our revenues and then start adding things back in. And so my recommendation would be to leave the salary study out for right now, but put it back in if come December we're going to
In December, they can fire it off.
Yeah, it won't take them long to because they'll use the thing that took the longest period this time was starting to figure out who they were going to use to compare us to. So they've got that list prepared now.
I had a question on some of those jobs. After that evening, I took the thing home. I was looking at some of those where if it had insufficient data to something where they couldn't compare it to, there was 5 positions or something I remember looking at.
There's a fire department, so I think.
The big one would be the fire advanced, but we'd have to make a kind of just a local decision about all of those. And so what I'd recommend is looking back at my suggestion would be to look back at what was recommended at the first step, since they couldn't confirm it, and go with the first step recommendation on those.
What I'm getting at on that, and like I said, it's like if it's just, I don't know, any job, if there wasn't something to compare it, how we classify it to that, how would you know if that job was not underfunded or whatever? You see what I'm saying? Like where it picked out those jobs that were underfunded.
Mm-hmm. So I'll pick one at random. So
recreation specialist.
So on the first one, you'll see that recreation specialist
It was like a 56, and then it should have been. They were recommended a 58 or something.
Yeah, so recreation specialist, based on the data they had, was recommended for an increase in step 1. And then what they do is to make sure that they're making in their opinion, a scientific recommendation. They then take the salary range and do that next step. Well, for a recreation specialist, they could figure out the first part, but they couldn't figure out the midpoint for some of the other jobs, for like recreation specialists. Right. So they say they couldn't confirm that it needed to go up with that second step. Mm-hmm. So my recommendation would be to take those positions and stick with what the recommendation was on the first step. Does that make...
So like somebody, does that, I mean, and I'm just using that because I just remembered that one, off the top of my head. So
what that would mean is that a recreation specialist, essentially the first step recommended that they go from a grade 55 to a grade 58. So my recommendation would be to make that change, since you couldn't come up with it.
Yeah, you can't quantify it, right.
Since step 2, they didn't say it wasn't a problem or was a problem, they didn't have the data to be able to answer that question. So it's a 2-stage process. First, they look at our step 3 compared to 25th percentile, figure out who's outside the market range. Then they look at the midpoint to confirm. Kind of it's an extra. It drives home the point that these jobs definitely need to be adjusted. And so,
well, basically, like if it was those, that's where I was going. Like those 5. Say there was, I think it was 5. There was 5 that they had nothing to compare to. I mean, because that person, individual, whatever it was, has a unique title. Does nothing be done? You know what I'm saying? That's what basically I was going at.
Yeah, so what you would fall back to the step 1 part of the study is what I'm saying. So we've got data on that part, just not that second step confirmation. So the positions were public information assistant 5, shelter manager, public relations coordinator, EMT intermediate, firefighter EMT intermediate, and a water plant operator trainee were the ones. So you'd go to step 1, of the study. All right. Tax budget, nothing. The biggest increase there is motor vehicle tax fees. It's just because we have more cars now registered in Currituck County because of population increase. You can see Public Works held pretty steady. Something to point out, we do have projects in here. Those projects, we can walk through those. Can you go to Munis and we'll walk through what those projects are? And these are the projects that we feel like we have to do. I mean, we cut all the projects that were things we felt like were probably a best practice or and if he doesn't have it in there, he's got it on a separate spreadsheet. But a good example of that, if you remember a bulk of that reduction, you remember the IFAS project at the courthouse where that stuff was peeling away? It was a $300,000 fix. We can do a $60,000 Band-Aid that'll get us through another 2 years. But at some point, it's things like that where these are the things we know we have to do, where we're going to do the bare minimum to get us through a year. Now, on something like that, I would recommend, maybe trying to push that as far as we can into the year, see how revenues do on transfer tax, and then maybe try to do the full fix if we can.
Right.
So, all right.
Are we not going to do mosquito control?
Mosquito control was done through Albemarle Regional Health now. So we contracted, it's a contracted service.
Yeah, because if they can call this.
Yeah, so it's a
800
contracted service. They do the testing, and then we've got a company that and I just signed the contract for this summer, so that if we need to use them, we can.
We need to get that information out. People are already
Okay,
in about
okay.
mosquito control.
Well, I know Albemarle Regional Health will give Public Works a bunch of those blocks and all that but you need to just call Public Works and they'll hand them out.
Okay.
Wasn't it a Japanese word?
All right. Public utilities. These are a couple of positions that under sewer right now. Well, one's a public utilities director, comes out of here and then all of the utilities pay and some money's transferred into administration to an indirect cost plan. And then this is also a couple of the sewer positions where we talked about on Wednesday that we're having issues with sewer and the finances there. So we have to help subsidize some of that operational cost where we're at right now. Register of Deeds, slight reduction. One thing we need to talk about in the Register of Deeds budget is as I said, we cut all salary increases out of the budget. One of those salary increases was around $2,800 for the Register of Deeds that the board recommended last year. I think the board
I think it was approved last year.
It was approved.
approved.
Yeah.
Gave half last year and then half this year.
Right.
So if we can add that back in, that's a non-issue, but just wanted to check with the board because with elected officials, I try not to get involved in their salaries. I don't have any purview there, so.
I don't think we approved it.
Well, we approved the COLA too last year in the budget, if you remember. That was approved along with all these other raises, everything. I mean, that was part of the approved budget last year for the 2-year budget. We approved the Register of Deeds increase plus a 2% COLA and everything else was approved already.
One of the issues with doing a 2-year budget is when something like this happens in mid-year, then you do come in and make major changes to the budget.
She's been there 7 years now. Is that right?
She's in her eighth.
8th year. And the first anything we did for her was last year, right?
Right.
Well, and then that's where
800 or something. It wasn't.
I think it was 28. Hold on, it's on the salary sheet. I've got that one. It was $2,898 for the salary portion. There'd be a little bit of an increase in FICA and retirement.
and that's where I go back to what, we did the 2-year budget. What is the last,
Sorry, go ahead.
when was the last COLA increase? How much was that percentage again? Was that
It was 2% 2 years ago
in 2018 or 2017?
in FY19.
So on
July 120.
19, they had a 2%?
So they just said,
I think kind of and Sandra can answer this a lot better than I can. I think kind of the model that the Currituck County's followed is every 2 years there's a 2% increase, assuming that the economy's not bottomed out.
No, I understand. I
Is
didn't
there
think we did
register
one
in
last
that?
year.
would
No,
Denise
the-
be in that?
Elected officials are not part of
Okay,
Cost of living.
cost of living.
No.
okay. Then I would say give her the approved rate. Unlike the other county staff who have enjoyed that 2%, the elected officials have not. So in this case, it's not kind of an apples to apples.
And I'll tell you, the county's been very consistent in approving COLA raises. That is not what industry lives in. And so that's a Benny for
But, I
working
mean,
for
that's some
Currituck
of-
County. But I'm going to
that's
tell you
some of the-
straight up, in the world, I mean, it had been hell, 6 years between COLAs that I saw previously.
But that's
So-
some, you work private sector, they give you a raise, you do good, you get more responsibilities, you
Yeah.
get more money. You're
Yeah.
looking at 2% over 2 years, which is,
1% here.
yeah.
I'm telling you, I sat at the same salary for many years and never got a COLA.
Well, I'm just saying, you got a lot of county
And I
employees.
did a great job for the record.
And I'm proud of you. I'm just saying, and I'm not even saying myself, I'm a county employee. You got a lot of county employees that with this pandemic, the EMS guys, the fire guys, the deputies, the the telecommunications department. Mary Beth, she's been getting pounded. And I mean, then you're going to look at that employee
award.
for
Seen his award.
you're going to look at that employee for $400,000 as a 2% cost of living, where some they expect that every 2 years. Then you're going to tell them no. You're not getting that. But hey, I need you to do these extra 16 things.
We can pick and choose. We can cherry pick employees throughout the county that are above and beyond and all of that. But the COLA is not a pick and choose. It's either everybody or it's nobody.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying I have an issue with the no COLA. I took 20 phone calls yesterday. I wrote them down. If y'all want to see the names, I'll give them to you. That people were just dissatisfied because they work. I mean, you have people that work in this county, and I'm not talking deputies. I'm talking people that work. Me and Owen last year looked at it, and as far as the revenue and trying to find it for last year. And I mean, 2% is not a lot of money, that's hitting this county back with reserves. And I mean, it's recorded, so I can't say what I think if we're not going to do that for somebody that works here for the county. And I mean, Sandra, Leanne, I mean, there's guys that work their asses off. I don't care. I'm going to say it. And I mean, it pisses me off. I mean, like I said, I took 20 phone calls yesterday from county employees that work blood, sweat, and tears. And I'm not saying me. I don't care if you give every person that works at the county a raise, but me. But I'm offended by it.
Well,
For
I
just a
think
little bit of money.
I think it's not a little bit of money, and it's a recurring money. And I think there's not one of us sitting up here that does not want to give it to them. But you have to look at the costs in the long run. And I've talked to county employees who are just excited that they were not furloughed.
Well-
Throughout North Carolina, there have been furloughs for people who work for the county government, and we also give them longevity. So they're getting that. A lot of other counties don't do that. So,
I'm just
These are
saying.
bizarre times.
Yes.
And
But the numbers, like you said, I mean, you work in the private sector, and like a lot of times people took this position for the package. And I'm not knocking county government. I'm thankful to have a job. The package is not like it used to be. I mean, I pay $900 a month for my family to have health insurance through the county.
Does this,
but you get health insurance free.
Yeah, and if I was self-employed, I could pay $600 a year, and or a month, and just not pay myself. I mean, there's other programs out there. I don't know. I mean, that's a touchy subject with me.
let
like
me
I
ask
said.
you, does, not, the COLA though, that also affects the fire and EMT employees as well too, correct?
Yes.
Would affect every employee.
Okay.
Every employee gets
And
that.
I really appreciate what Kevin said, and it's true. Everybody deserves and everybody should. But you said we were going to look at this in December, and if things are progressing positively,
So
that we could readdress the 2% that was budgeted for this year and readdress it. And if it looks positive, go ahead and initiate it.
Right.
That's correct. So, and if I can kind of put this out there, this is not a recommendation I want to make.
None of us do.
I mean, I know it's not an easy thing to sit up here and tell you that I want to cut this or cut that, or it's hard. But I think that if we wait till December, we know what our revenues are really going to be. And if the problem is if you do a COLA now, or you do any of the expenditures now, and the revenues don't come in, you are not going to be able to take the COLA away. I mean,
It's got to be funded every year then after that.
yeah, I mean,
And it's, well, and
I understand what you're coming from too, because
You want to upset people? Take back a pay raise.
you can't. No, I'm an employer, so I know. Yeah, you can't. You get somebody raised, you can't really take the money away at that point. It's hard. But then, if we do, then we're going to have to continue to come up with a way to make up for that.
Pasquotank County, for the pandemic, they gave, I mean, like I said, I know the governor thing where we had, I was talking to my neighbor the other day. He was given 24 hours vacation to take off. I worked every day in April. And I'm not just using me. I'm saying the telecommunicators. Owen can attest to his wife. We have money in reserves that gets interest, and I'm not saying you dip into that or whatever. And like I said, I don't care about myself.
you have to.
I know, but I'm saying I don't care about myself. But the phone calls that I keep getting and the beating that I keep taking, from the guys that, they need it. And it's 2%. Me and Owen found it last year, and it didn't happen. So that's all I'm saying. It's a touchy subject.
You guys didn't
the
find it
feedback
last year. You wanted to cut something else.
We found it.
It was cutting something else. It was something else. You wanted to take it out of land transfer or
The
something.
land banking fund.
Yeah, that's not finding it. That's just taking it from somewhere else. So,
I think one of the things that we have to keep in perspective, and I am proud of the work that the county employees have done. I'm proud that we've not had to furlough anybody, but it almost makes me feel guilty because there are so many people who aren't county employees who are unemployed, who've lost both household incomes and are struggling to how to make ends meet. Where does it end? They don't know when their next job is going to get here because restaurants, we don't know what level. And I just think we all want to give them a raise. I mean, there's no doubt that we want to do a COLA, but these, as Paul said, these are extraordinary times. And I think, when we're talking about raises for county employees and there's citizens out there hurting as much as they are with no income or little income and little prospects if we don't get back to normal, I just think that if we can revisit in December, it's fiscally responsible, it's ethically responsible, and I think that we have to keep that in mind.
Well, very good point. And to add the insult to the injury, right? Imagine you're out of work right now, and we authorize the COLA, and in comes the end of the year where, God forbid, we have to raise taxes in order to be able to continue doing things.
Right.
Now, not only were you unemployed, but your property taxes just went up. And now you got to pay the taxes. I'm sorry. I'm with you, Selena. We do not know what this is going to do.
Right.
But you're in agreement in December, though. If it looks good, we go ahead and.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, but you're still for it. But just wait.
Oh, you're gonna know in a couple weeks. I mean, when that road.
And that's been a consistent.
I'm just saying.
That's been a consistent message,
Right,
though.
and
We do not know what this is
Right,
going to
and-
look like.
And
One of the
we
things-
don't know if there's going to be a hurricane in 2 weeks.
Right, well,
I
that's-
mean, we
Oh,
don't
now
know.
now you've done it.
Yeah, now you said it.
Thanks,
Now.
Kitty.
Well, get ready.
So, the other thing to keep in mind is because there's occupancy. Well, Ben and I were talking about this earlier. It doesn't equate to volume. So they might have rented the house, but there might be 10 people instead of 20.
And they
So
might
that-
not go
what
to
is-
a restaurant.
What does that look like to sales tax? And sales tax is a big number, obviously. For
And
us,
what's
I'm
the
on
message been? Bring your stuff from home.
your stuff
Yeah.
from home, right? 'Cause
So
we're
I
not-
guess the consensus I've heard then was that
We're gonna wait.
It sounds like the board is in agreement with the COLA, but let's wait.
when it's appropriate.
Let's just make sure the financially sound the county is in December to initiate it and go ahead with the Register of Deeds increase that was funded last year.
Correct.
Is that what I've heard from everybody?
Yes.
I'm just not going to make a comment.
Okay, well, you're an improvement of the COLA though.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I
Right.
mean,
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
we have the money. I mean, we
Clearly.
have the money. I mean, like I said, it's. I mean, we have it. The money's going to come. Currituck County. I mean, we are. I mean, we're good at what we do. I mean, that's why they come here. We're the only county that has the guts to have the 4th of July. I mean, it's gonna be busy.
Oh, I don't doubt. I
Just
agree.
wait
I
till
think
tomorrow.
I think we're going to be fine.
Yeah.
That's my. But
And that's
I mean,
why
I know.
December will tell. All
I-
right.
What?
All right.
Next hot topic.
That was the Register of Deeds budget. Court facilities budget. One of the things that was in the 2-year budget that has come out was a couple of extra positions for court security and some capital changes or some structural changes to the courthouse for security. Once again, that can be reevaluated as revenues come in. And probably something to start thinking about is as revenues come in, if they come in at 100%, then that's an easy discussion. There's a lot of things we can add back in. If they come in at, we get half of what we thought we were going to lose, what are the priorities for the board?
Pick and choose. Yeah.
Is it COLA? Is it salary study? Is it new positions? Is it capital? So start, we don't need to figure that out today, but those are things for you all to kind of start to consider.
Is that part of the security that I believe we agreed to, where they redo the entries? Okay, that's all.
And the
it
other
is.
part was the state, whatever required or whatever, that's already been,
This
already been-
was something that's separate from what was, but that's not in the budget, what you're talking about, Mike.
Not.
Because it required 2 new positions.
Okay.
And it required, now, I think I had discussions and was trying to find a way to get it to part-time positions, and we might be able to make that happen because you already have a part-time employee at the court certain days. But even then, you had you had a capital spend that wasn't required. I mean, it's not necessary, so we cut that out of the budget.
Yeah,
but the required state part, we already did that, correct?
I think so,
Yeah, that was last year.
Yep. So we'll continue down.
Next big budget. Sheriff.
So,
I had it yesterday. Wednesday.
So, Sheriff, we'll talk about that budget. Not a ton of change in the. It's a lot of salary money, so there's a large number change, but that's typically due to longevity and some other increases. The biggest change here is going to be capital outlay. The bulk of the capital outlay in the sheriff's budget was for vehicles,
Good gosh.
and so that's gone.
Yeah,
They're going to make do with. Now, we've worked with the sheriff's office to try to, any money that they were able to save this year, the board has worked with the sheriff's office to allow a budget amendment so they can try to refresh a couple of those under money that we already have, but
Well, that's a significant savings right there.
it is.
Wow.
So we're gonna look to stretch vehicles, and like I said, it's not just sheriff's vehicles though.
It's across the
Countywide.
board. Right.
Across the
Right.
board, unless we've got a department that literally doesn't have a vehicle because that one has died, like Public Works at the beach has got one that is just
The old Ranger
dead.
sitting over
Yeah,
there.
and so they have to have one. We've cut
Well,
all
I think,
vehicles.
some of those vehicles, stretch them another year and a half.
The other discussion that we need to have here,
How many miles you got on your
at the meeting in March, the Board of Commissioner meeting, you all made a motion to change the sheriff's salary halfway, kind of, or a portion, and then discuss the other portion at the budget meeting. And so I think that this is probably the appropriate time to have that discussion.
I think in my opinion, probably should wait till December like we're doing with the COLAs right now. Let's just kind of see then.
We fixed the compression issue at this time, though. That's my
Yes.
recollection. So
The amount that you all approved did fix the compression issue.
Yes. I think this salary probably should be the same as the other ones, and if we're gonna wait till December, let's wait for everybody's then. It's my thought,
I agree.
I
Huh?
agree.
Okay.
okay.
All right?
With stretching the vehicles, trying to, is there any type of, how does the sheriff handle the maintenance on vehicles?
It varies as far as the we have POs which Sandra could address too at Napa, at Mayock Automotive, at Soundside. As far as, what do you mean as far as, the oil changes are done? What?
What I'm driving at is it time to start looking at in-house service capabilities? I know we talked years ago about combining with the school system and doing a bus garage.
That died for once every time.
I know, and
we
it'd be
talked
such
about
a
it
good
last
idea.
time. They wanted instructional classrooms and all this extra stuff
So-
added into the building, and it.
So just on sheriff's vehicles, your vehicle maintenance budget is $149,000.
If you hire somebody and then you have to get all the equipment and the certifications.
Oh,
and
yeah,
the
you're
training,
setting up a
you're gonna be
multi-million-dollar
over- You're going to be
facility.
over that then.
Well, like the bus garage maintains the SRO's vehicles, and they do all the maintenance and stuff on that, which,
What's the total for vehicle maintenance and operating fund? If you can pull that up while.
Considering the number of vehicles, that's not,
I was going to say,
that is not an
149 is
excessive amount of
nothing.
money.
Well, you guys got
Not for me, no. It's
pretty
not.
good warranties on the new stuff. It's
yeah,
like
on all the new
100,000 mile
stuff, it's
warranty.
like ridiculous. I think it's
When
like
the-
120,000. I think.
Yeah.
The sheriff's office, because of the kind of use vehicles get, they try to turn them around, and it makes sense to turn them around, I think, every 4 to 5 years.
It depends, like what Owen was saying earlier. If it's a patrol vehicle, the guy that's working and responding to domestics compared to like an investigations,
Yeah.
a civil process, an admin.
They can go a lot
Yeah, some of
longer.
them. They're, and Sandra probably could have. I think the admin is 2 years longer than a patrol vehicle, and the civil process and the investigations and the narcotics they're a year longer than the. So it varies on what the.
Usage is.
Yeah, because I mean, the patrol guy that might have to respond to.
So total
Something
cost
like
and
that.
operating fund for vehicle maintenance is 200. I can't read that number now.
55,
It'd take 100 years to pay for doing our own facility.
I don't know that you'd ever.
Yeah,
That's a pretty low.
yeah.
I think the only thing you'd gain is if you needed an oil change done now, you might
Right.
be able to get it done now.
One two-post lift is $5,000. That's not.
And then a salary of 1 or 2 people,
yeah.
you got
Yeah.
that right there.
And then, like you said, what do you do
Yeah.
if you don't have work? If nothing needs to be done for that guy?
The other thing that we get from this is we pay somebody in the county who then turns around and spends money in the county
Well, Chesapeake maybe.
unless they stay in a hotel.
Yeah. No, and they do, like he said, for that far as if you need an oil change, those and like you need tires because like our tires go through Napa. They are. I will say that our local guy. I mean, you get it if you call in the morning, you can get it that same day.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Yeah. So this is the jail budget. Scroll down to go to the.
Can I just ask what kind of advertising is needed for the detention center?
Go. I think they've got a budget.
I know it's only $400, but I'm really curious.
I think there's some recruitment stuff.
Employment recruitment.
Recruitment.
And recruiting people to work at the jail.
I might call that recruitment then instead of advertising.
Yeah, maybe change that line item.
All of our codes are based on G codes, so it has to stay advertising. Yeah, that's
Sorry,
funny.
I just had to ask.
That was a good question.
And I'm just going to toss out part of the reason I was slightly late today is I had to schedule a tour of the jail. And I would encourage anybody on this board that has not toured our jail facility needs to go get a tour of the jail facility. That is, I met with Captain Castello, and I'm telling you,
Their jail
is a tightly run ship.
It's ran.
And it shows.
They
And-
literally have he gets calls where people ask for their policies on how they do. I mean, they do a good. I mean, you don't. It is a
I've
systematic
been in the walls between
factory.
He actually said anyway, as we digress, part of the policies that they've implemented have been reported and utilized nationwide
Oh yeah, they get
because
phone
of
calls.
the rationale that went behind it. Anyway, I am very impressed with the way our jail is run.
And you're going to smell some bleach.
Actually,
They
no, I
clean
can
it all the
smell
time.
breakfast.
Oh, you didn't smell bleach? They clean it all the time.
And for those that don't know and or are listening, that our kitchen in the jail is used not only to prepare the inmates' food,
Seniors.
but that's where the senior center food is prepared by a contract to then supply food for there. So I was assured what I was smelling was not lunch. That was for the seniors.
Right. Little different animal.
Because you don't want to go to the jail for the food.
When that contract was enacted, you would not believe the heat we took.
No.
Because out of Pasquotank County.
I bet.
That's so.
And I
that's-
believe, don't we cook food for somebody else too?
Senior centers, meals, do they help with the meals?
Another
and wheels?
county
We did, but.
They used to
I
do for
don't
lunch
know.
on Fridays.
But
County
anymore?
employees could get
I was
like a
gonna
$3
say, yeah, you used
lunch.
to be able to go in there and purchase a cheap lunch. And
It was like
if you
$3
wanted-
on the
picnic,
co-
sweet picnic facility behind the fence.
6 feet from somebody.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Let's keep rolling.
general public could go in, and it was,
Yeah.
it was surprising the number of people that went in.
They would have some. Selena, that's where the advertising comes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was menus.
Thank you. Sorry to get us
menu
so
of the
off
day.
track. Who knew?
School staff would go in there and have lunch, you know?
I'll bring my own.
So we've animal control. We're going to move on to. I'm going to try to keep us on time.
Yes, thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
That.
No major changes from prior years.
Okay.
Jury commission.
Any comments, Paul?
So here you have EMS, and this is one that we'll have to evaluate as we get into the year as well. Two of the positions that were cut from this budget were actually in there to try to save overtime. I'm going to push Chief Melton to try to save overtime money without them, but there is a chance that your overtime number is going to have to go up. Either overtime or those two positions would need to be added back in because they're what's called E-bodies.
Yeah.
If you remember, we foregoed those in last year to fully staff the Corova ambulance. And so I've pulled them back out because, like I said, we're not doing any new positions, but we'll see how the overtime budget works there. That number that you see up there is based on having some E-bodies to throw in there, but we're hopeful that they can make it up through some operational management kind of things. But we'll track where that's at in December as well. and
Okay,
let you
I
all
know we were looking at a re-chassis of an off-road ambulance.
That's out.
True.
Like I said, all vehicles.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
But what the one we have is.
I think we can get one more year out of it.
Think is the operative word.
I think we can get one more year.
That's probably a very good December.
That's by
Get the ball
December it
rolling.
doesn't.
Well, get the ball rolling so it's ready
Right,
for
right.
you know.
Well, that's to say.
Yeah, because we
December-
wouldn't see it this year
Right,
anyway.
yeah.
Well, December, we were going to probably
Okay,
evaluate
but
a lot of this. But
I would suggest that we do flag that because that's.
Oh, everything's going to be. So like I said, we're going to have. So in December, we're going to have some separate conversations. We're going to have a conversation about tourism related because that's OCTAX. We're going to have a conversation about the stuff in the general fund, which is funded through sales tax, which would be your COLA, salary study, new positions. And then we'll have a conversation about capital, which is actually funded through transfer tax. Because I've cut transfer tax way back as well. Worst case scenario, like I said, the economy stalls and people, like I said, I know people are buying and selling property like crazy right now, but worst case scenario
okay.
planning.
That's it.
What's the professional services?
I pulled up the,
In emergency management or EMS?
EMS.
Training?
pull that up.
Got down here 25,000 for
Actually, in the revised CBOD, it's 33. COVID.
Yeah, I think it is. So it's wellness exams for employees. They do a yearly physical to try to help out on workers' comp claims.
why is there such a difference in this year and
I don't think they budgeted. I think that's a program that,
They budgeted
They just
it,
started?
and moved it out for overtime.
there you go. They budgeted it and moved it out for overtime. That's why. And then background checks for employment.
did they put that in and then move it to overtime?
That's what they had to do
Okay.
because they overspent their overtime last year.
See, originally they were budgeted 25,000 this year, and now they're down to 37.5.
Because when somebody goes over a line, we require the department head to start finding the money in their budget if possible. And it's not a requirement to do those physicals, it's a best practice. Now, having said that, if we talked a little bit on Wednesday about, and this is another discussion for December, about a wellness clinic, that's the kind of thing that could be handled in the wellness clinic and would, once you have that contract in place, wouldn't cost any extra money to really facilitate that. Okay. So emergency management.
She's a trooper.
She's a trooper. Mary Beth.
Communications went up a little bit. The reason is that if you look at the overtime line item, there's scheduled overtime in their shift work, and they've never actually had enough budget to cover the scheduled overtime, so we added that in.
Well, it also goes to the changing the way you did vacation and
Yeah.
how they could use it.
So here's inspections. If you remember, we were going to increase the fees to get up around $1 million for inspections. That was based on covering the cost. We're projecting only $500,000. Hopefully we're way off on that, but real quick, before we move on, inspections. We need to have a conversation around inspections and planning and development.
In fees.
As far as building permit fees, we'll get into that when we get to the master fee schedule, if we can. The conversation I wanted to have is, currently planning and inspections are together. They are a department. I don't have this in the budget right now because it has potential salary impact as far as more spend. But I think as we've seen, there is a lot of planning work that is occurring if the economy stays strong as far as residential subdivision reviews, hopefully commercial, special use permits, that kind of thing. And because of that, we have an awful lot of inspections work. And so I think that there is an opportunity to take those departments and split them apart. But if you do that, there's probably a 4.5% increase in salary for Bill Nunes because he becomes a department head
So Lori is overseeing all of this right now.
right now.
Yep.
And
We've done this twice, I know, and brought them back together.
I've worked in planning and inspections. It really depends on who your chief building inspector is. As long as you've got a really good chief building inspector, it works pretty well. I think we've got a really good chief building inspector. I think that the permitting staff works really well. I think that Bill is constantly pushing for improvement as far as technology. I mean, if it wasn't for Bill, we would not have been able to move to the telework that we did with the permitting staff. I mean, plain and simple, we're probably as technically advanced on permits as
He does a good job.
any
Well,
urban.
and we do inspections virtually without even putting somebody on site. We've been able to do inspections. So he has done, I agree with you.
So I think there's potential benefit to let your planning director focus on planning and let your chief building. But now I'm not going to tell you that it stay that way. I mean, because like Owen was alluding to, it's all dependent on who your chief building inspector is. If your chief building inspector isn't as strong as Bill, then you always have that option to put them back. But I've seen it. It flip flops everywhere that way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the nature of it. When I say you've got a good chief building inspector, it typically revolves around how good their customer service skills are. It's not how good they are in their building code knowledge. It's do they grasp.
How do they treat the public?
Yeah,
Well, he does get information out.
he does that. He
Does that.
Bill is good. He's one of the first ones here, and he's one of the last ones. I mean, Bill is really good at his job.
and there's some nuance to if you decided to split those and do that salary increase. That nuance would be based around the permitting employees, because you've got one that does zoning permits and probably still needs to answer to Laurie because that subject matter is very specific. And then you've got others that, but that's the way it is in every permit office that's split that I've ever seen. So.
Well, and me being in the trades, I've talked to a lot of other different trades with their permits and all that, and in general, as a whole, they've been happy, but they have complimented Bill Nunes on resolving stuff and getting involved. So.
Yeah.
I've got to say, he's probably the best chief building inspector we've had.
And that goes for over 100 years, if Owen's saying that. No, he does do a good job. I hear people rave on him, and he
meant to add since we started inspecting buildings.
Yeah,
Back
but I
when
mean he
was
does.
first the commissioner.
I've been
He's a good worker.
worked with all of them.
Well, and like I said, the other part of this is planning is not going to get simpler. I mean, it's going to get. I mean, that is a complex subject matter, and giving your planning director the ability to focus solely on planning, I think, makes a lot of sense too. So I think that there's a lot to be said for moving down that path. But I wanted to put that before the board because, like I said, one of the things that you would have to do, I think, is it's not a lot, but a small salary increase and reclassification for Bill.
Well, how long is Bill? Bill's not planning on retiring anytime soon, is he?
Don't think so.
Yeah.
Can we
the questions
consider
always
this?
been-
And you're not asking for a decision right now on this.
That would be a
correct?
December discussion.
It can be. I mean, yeah, we can do that.
I think it's
Okay.
Why
advantageous
go
to
ahead
keep
and do
that.
it now?
Yeah, I agree with
I
that
just
one.
don't see how we can justify the salary increase if
Well,
we're
what are you talking
of-
about for?
Split the
What's the
department.
salary increase? What are we talking about?
4.5%.
So he'd be.
It's not.
I can't get on board with
There's
that.
a lot of moving
Does
parts in
differ.
this.
There's
And
moving
I think
parts.
we need a completely separate discussion to discuss what the
would-
intricacies
yes.
are. It's not
Asking-
just a salary
right,
item
Right,
to
I'm
me.
just asking what the implications are.
But like Ben said
it's not
too.
the money.
Ben said too. I mean, like you said, it lets Lori focus on what Lori has to focus on. It lets Bill focus on what Bill. I mean,
The problem has always been,
I don't know, so it
If the
that may not be
planning
December,
director
it's
could
just a
trust the
separate work
building.
session, on this item.
with Bill, you got that trust.
Do you have the salary sheet?
Well, I mean,
Just,
Oh, I got it. Hold on, I got it. Here we
while
go.
we're talking about money, it's, what does it look like, right? So,
Well, I don't have his. I've got the range.
yeah.
I mean, really, you could. I mean, not trying to. I said, could you say you're getting your money in December? I mean, I'm not trying to. We're.
I'd
splitting
prefer not to do that.
I know that was a joke. When did it pair back up together? Because wasn't it about 6 years ago, Owen?
Yeah, I remember when they put
I don't think so.
And they converted it to keep him from jumping to Greensboro, right?
Yeah.
It was when Ben Woody was here that they recombined it because he had a
It was
Job
4 or 5
opportunity.
4 or 5 years ago.
It's probably 5 or 6 years ago because it was. I remember talking to Vance about it because Ben was going to go to Greensboro.
We had split them when we had a weak planning director. We had 2 in a row.
So she's doing the math right now. Annual pay 63. Or sorry, 71. Yeah.
How Bill found out he got a salary cut. 63.
everybody's doing it for him.
Your check's in the mail. It's coming in December.
We just haven't signed it yet.
It's post-dated.
It's post-dated. But I mean, Ben, I mean, you came from that issue. I mean, you did both.
I've
So,
worked
I
in
mean,
both.
You've worked in both. I mean, do you feel it's more vital for both? If that guy had oversaw that and this, when Lori oversees that, I mean, is it better?
So I've actually seen it 3 ways. I've worked in a department where they were split. I've worked in a department where the planning director was over everything, and I've worked in a department where the chief building inspector was over planning, which is a whole other. The key with all of it is to make sure that there's good relationships because they interact so closely together. whenever they're together, sometimes there's better communication. I don't worry about that here because there's a really good relationship between Bill and Laurie. They're physically close to each other, and so that makes a big difference. You know, if your building inspections group or permitting group is here, and then on the other side of the county is your planning department, it gets a little trickier. But I think having it split, especially when there's a lot of development pressure, like I said, gives your planning department time to focus in on planning.
Well, right now, the fire marshal's position technically is overseen by Lori.
Correct.
Technically, right now.
Technically.
So that could be, yes, so she doesn't need that piece of it either.
Yeah. So, fire code official, I think, is
Okay,
the
there you go.
technical
Okay,
term
there
that
you
we
go.
use right now.
Okay, fire code, okay.
So, the number is,
The salary number's $3,200, so it's about $5,000 by the time you get everything else on.
once you have FICA retirement and all that in.
How much?
5,000. So,
Total impact. Yeah. Well, so I think this would be a separate work session. Then we don't have to wait till December to get it done, but maybe have a separate
Talk about it in June.
to work out all the.
Yep.
Make sure everybody's on board.
okay.
Work on it.
Because
Separate item.
you can do it on a Friday to a Monday. You could just split it.
Yeah.
That's how quick we've done it before.
Sandra would like it if it was on a
On our pay
pay
day.
period.
Well, I'm just,
Personnel policy
Saying
says it's on a pay
Okay.
period. It'll be on a pay period.
Right, right.
So,
You may be getting it.
Okay.
we'll keep.
Let's
Are
roll
we good to
that.
keep
Let's
going,
keep
or
going. Do it.
we've got about half of operating fund left to go, and we've got about 20 minutes until we hit 12 o'clock. So if you guys are good to push through, we'll keep
Keep going.
keep getting.
Well, I'm going to have to step out and let you guys handle the rest of it. So, got to head up to Virginia.
Okay.
So, thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, y'all,
Carry on.
since that's going on, do y'all want to take a
Take a
5
5-minute
Take
break.
5-minute
Take
break
5.
then.
We finished inspections. We'll go to the next department. Fire services. So this is the essentially the fire side of administration and fire and EMS. So Ray Azario is in here. That kind of stuff. If there's no questions, there's no major changes
There's a big change in travel.
in travel.
From 5,000 to 2,000.
Took it back to
Oh, it jumped from 334 to 2,000.
they took money out of there to cover overtime costs.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I won't ask anymore.
We'll keep going, and then we'll hit the 2 fire departments after we get done with operating fund. Medical examiners, pretty straightforward.
Who'd you tell us that was?
It's
Medical
kind of,
examiner, when somebody passes away,
No, I know what it is.
it's a dead topic.
Well, there's actually 2. We have
Owen, just Owen.
you say who it is?
Yeah.
I don't know the who.
Okay.
I just know it's who we
Owen,
call.
it's Dr.
Doc-
Jimmy Owens,
Dr.
and,
Owens.
and Stephanie Smith, who's
Yes.
the captain at EMS.
Yep.
They're the 2 medical examiners.
Yep.
Airport. So you'll see a small capital outlay here. That was for a piece of equipment that they need to be able to move the ground power unit. That was the thing we talked about at the
Probably a
retreat.
tractor thing or something.
It's the thing that helps jets maintain
Ugh.
power.
Yeah.
is that the one that they were trying to pick up used
Yep.
from?
Elizabeth City for $1.
Coast
Yep.
Guard or something. Yeah, okay.
Forestry, pretty standard, just a small increase. Soil and water conservation, the reduction there is basically due to capital. Cooperative extension, some reduction, but a lot of that's due to capital reduction. Economic development stayed pretty flat.
Okay, getting back to the cooperative,
Mm-hmm.
the 4-H day camp.
So the reason that's still in there, it's not happening this year.
Yeah.
The reason that's still in there is because most of the money is spent.
Already.
Well, most of the money for this for the money you see there pays for the summer in FY or calendar year 21. Because they have to go ahead and
So it's after July, or July.
so it's actually for next summer. The spend that you see up there would be next summer. So we anticipate having.
So we had a
camp.
savings
Yeah.
this year.
Well, no, because
Yeah, they
the
spent.
registrations offset the cost of the camp, so it kind of
Got it.
it washes.
They also do something at spring break sometimes, but they didn't do that this year.
No. So economic development, pretty standard. Planning,
Wait a minute, slow down, please.
yes, ma'am.
There's a scroll button.
I know.
Need this, where you can just go.
I'm trying to look. Okay.
Okay. Health department, mental health, basically just contracted services. DSS, a lot of these expenditures are tied in already when you get down into some of the other stuff we're going to see, but stay basically steady. These are some of the funds that come into for programs that run through state and federal government for public assistance and county assistance,
So it's just a pass through.
basically.
The contract services child support, is that what we? Never mind, I answered
Okay.
that. I answered that.
All right. All right. County assistance.
So, county assistance, you don't expect any Currituck Kids funds to come in?
We don't budget those until they come in.
Okay.
So what we'll do is recognize the money as it comes in.
What are, on the child support, what are professional services on that, Ms. Kitty? You're
In child support,
in child support, or it's under DSS,
I think it's up above there,
Oh, we gotta
Sandra.
go
at the
above.
bottom. What's
Professional services, child support.
I think it's when we have to go, searching for child support when it's not being paid, or, doing DNA testing, stuff like that.
yeah, those.
Senior center, that's about as steady as a budget gets from one year to the next. Libraries, similar thing, just a steady budget, small decrease, but that's due to capital outlay. Crime prevention, that's pass-through money.
Goodness.
Recreation, looks like a big cut, but the bulk of the cut is due to capital projects. We've got some things they'll keep for a year, but it's things like refinishing the gym floor. I think there's some repairs that they wanted us to make to maybe the concession stand at the football stadium. But just putting all capital, like I said, if it can wait one more year, we're gonna either wait a year or then readdress it come December. So.
Is there going to be much savings? I know it pretty much with the revenue that comes in from the sports. It pretty much
It's a wash.
Yeah,
The fee that you pay basically covers the cost to put on the program. So,
the shirts, the
Yeah.
referees, whatever.
Yeah.
Figure.
you'll see a capital outlay for rural center. You'll see there's still money in there. The reason for that is we saved quite a bit of money on our ground maintenance contracts, but one of the things we had to do was purchase a larger mower for the rural center because they're cutting the rural center and they're cutting Soundfront Park, and so we're getting
Rec is doing a bunch of the other
Yeah.
stuff, like I said.
So that's to buy, I think, an 11-foot mower, one of the, yeah. So,
That's going to save. That's going to show considerable between those two. It's going to show some considerable savings.
yeah, and I mean, so far, I mean, I drove past the facilities the other day just to kind of check, and I think that the quality of the landscaping looks
The guys do
looks
a
good.
job.
So, College of the Albemarle stayed the same. So on public schools, let's talk about the school system. We'll start with capital outlay. So the capital outlay portion of the school budget is funded through sales tax, and so the 40% reduction in sales tax includes the sales tax we used to fund school capital. So traditionally what has happened, at least the last couple of years, we've given them $1.4 million for spend. We've set aside, I think, $750,000 in the fund balance. And that $750,000 goes into a fund that when we have to build a new school helps offset some of that cost. Because of the reduction in sales tax, the proposal I'm going to put before you is that we go to $1,025,000 for their actual spend. The $25,000 is because we obligated ourselves at a work session, if you remember, for mobile classrooms. And instead of doing $750,000 into essentially a savings account, we would put $350,000 aside for a new school. If we didn't think a new school was coming anytime in the next little bit, we could potentially talk about not setting that money aside and letting them, keeping their current spend for capital higher. But we know there's a new school coming in the next little bit. So, the school did submit a budget by May 15th. Their capital budget, and there was a letter that's at the front of this. I informed them that we were only going to be allocating $1,025,000. The budget that they sent over to us has a spend of $1.4 million. So they basically, can you go to the letter that was sent in? I'm just going to read it. So basically, although I was notified that the school district's budget was reduced to $1 million as we received the items on the original budget list, we were not comfortable cutting additional items from the budget. It is our hope that the county budget can be configured in a way that will allow the school district to maintain the original $1.4 million budget. And that's from the superintendent.
But that's not the same thing in December.
Yeah, that would be a December discussion too then, right?
It would be.
But like we're going into the budget with a doom and gloom point of view and a philosophy. They're going into it with the other side, sunny. Everything is sunny. They need to plan on a $1,025,000 and then hopefully get some stuff. But I think they need to come up with a $1,025,000 budget, and we already know where the $25,000 is going.
For the capital outlay piece. Yeah,
Correct.
Well, no, I agree. And if
But so essentially, I mean,
everybody else is waiting.
the Board of Commissioners has no authority over how they spend their money or their fund balance. All you have authority over is the money that you allocate to
Got
them.
it. So the recommendation is their capital outlay is $1,025,000. Period.
That's my recommendation.
How
to the
they
Board of
spend
Commissioners.
it's up to them. Got it.
Unless there's, like you said, I mean, like, what was it? We had to spend a couple of, because it was
There was a
Some emergencies
masonry
or something,
failure.
Yeah.
Is it possible we can look at it again, though, in December?
Oh yes,
just like
it'll be
everything
one of
else?
those things
Okay.
that. I mean, if sales tax comes in at 100%, then that money's there.
Couple of Wendy's.
So, no reasoning why they need that other 300.
Well, they gave
Well,
us
they gave us.
they
I'm
gave us a
sorry.
list of projects. Go back up. They gave us their capital budget and broke it down by project. And then by school, I believe it's broken down by project. And they've got on there actually things that they cut to get to 1.4. If you scroll down some, you'll see some shaded things.
This column here is
Yeah.
the cuts.
So those are cuts I believe they made to get to the 1.4. So they didn't prioritize it. They just told us what they would spend the money on.
Do we know how much they saved?
from the schools. I asked for that from the superintendent. The response is that basically it's just minimal savings you'd see on utilities because salaries are still being paid, cafeteria workers are still being paid, custodians I think are still being paid because they're helping with some of the meal delivery.
And that's fine, but I remember when we were talking about Friday half days, one of the thing was the cost saving that we were going to have by potentially not having the schools open for.
I don't think that wasn't a conversation I don't think I was here for.
No, you weren't here for that.
I'd say considerably on the fuel or the buses.
Fuel on buses.
I mean,
that would
they're-
be a major one, I would think.
So I asked, and kind of the statement that I got back was that it was a minimal cost savings. So.
Utilities cost because
It's-
they can turn their air conditioning down.
If we could go ahead and
Up.
get how much got saved, I'd.
Turned it.
I'll ask, but that's all. I mean,
I know.
It's up, so yeah.
The fuel for the buses, I mean, that has to be pretty.
I mean, we could make an assumption.
Well, we know how much fuel they get because they get it out of our farm, right? Fuel farm?
Yes.
Well, don't the bus drivers get paid by the hour too? If
They
they're
do.
Driving.
So we could say
They're still doing some stuff.
how much fuel they're pulling
but-
out
Not all of them.
compared to last year.
Not a fleet of buses all day long.
Except for the part-time people aren't doing it.
Anyway.
Anyways, there's probably savings there that.
but yeah, I'm not the one to.
Okay.
I asked the question, and that was the answer that I got. So.
Are we going to have a work session where they come, I mean, as we suggested earlier in the day?
I can set up something for so we can have that discussion. Traditionally, I guess in Currituck County, it's been the entire school board and the entire board of commissioners. What I've seen other places is that it's typically maybe the chairperson and the superintendent that come to present the budget. If we want to do all of the boards, we probably would have all the members
Well-
of both boards. We'd have to wait.
We can do it that way. I mean, we can do it with the chair and the superintendent because that's who's doing the talking. I mean, I think it's a show of support and solidarity, but given the COVID situation, I mean, what we need is what we need.
After May 22nd, if everything goes the same, will that allow more bodies, correct?
It will. The only thing that I would caution the board about is that, I mean, we're on a track right now to present officially the budget to the public first meeting in June, so we can't.
Can't delay too long.
Yeah.
I mean, we could have.
I mean, I would just like to hear from them
Right.
what, in their view, what necessities will be impacted by our decision. If I'm looking at some of these projects on the sheet here, I see some of these as superfluous. I just don't see that it's something that has to be done in the calendar year, but there may be something I'm missing. I see here the track resurfacing at the high school, $195,000, for example. I would like to hear why that is a necessity in the next year. I mean, I think we as a board can go through here and see where we would cut, what we see as not a necessity, but I would like to hear their justification as
know.
to why that is a necessity. Maybe there's something we're missing. So,
What's a
The
want
the
versus
school
a
track, and I will because when I saw that and everything,
I'm
I
just
walked
using
it
it as an
yeah,
example.
oh yeah, but I walked that the other morning. They can't have an event. I literally turned my ankle. Or it was dark. I was just walking, exercise, sheriff's department, but literally the track is dangerous. I will say that is a.
They got
can't
an
hold.
extra. I mean, it got spared a whole season of not use.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's
It might not get used.
Kevin's
it
been
won't
on
get
it
used
now.
until it's repaved because it's
I'm not-
dangerous. I'm just using that as an example.
I think yeah.
So what I'll reach out
And,
to the
and again, to your point, here's the budget, right? You guys figure out what you're going to do with it, and we can revisit it in December. But it would.
Yeah, because
we can set up a work session to have them come and present, but keep in mind that anything you take out over $1 million is coming out of our fund balance.
well, like Ben said too. I mean,
Good
could
million
out
25.
of their budget?
And anything that we add over $1 million, I said it wrongly.
Okay, yeah.
Anything we add over $1 million is county fund balance that's being spent.
Well, the other thing is too, like you said, the chairman and the county manager and maybe another commissioner and
Come out of the
their chairman.
budget.
I mean, I'm just.
So,
Oh, and we'll sign you up for a meeting.
Our revenues stay where I've projected them at. You're spending fund
so,
balance.
so we would be having this meeting with the school system for them to convince us to cut our current budget to give them more. Is that what we're saying?
I don't have any money to cut from the current budget.
I just think if we're looking at this as a point of view of we have made some tough decisions as to what to cut, I would think that if they understand that it is going to be cut by $400,000 roughly, what our point of view is, what's a necessity and what needs to be done now, is very different. I would just like to hear why they think this can't be cut. That's I mean,
Well, if we can
once
do it,
again,
let's-
I'm looking through this and seeing things that,
So Selena, does the state, and this is that whole, all of the different funding pots, do we know if the state gave a COLA? Because
I don't
if
know
we're
that.
financing, because the county pays a piece of it, if the county's paying for a cost of living increase for teachers, and we're stuck telling our employees that your COLA is not going to be funded this year, I got a problem with that.
Well, I don't know that we would have.
we can't tell them what to do with it.
We can't. So
Well-
let's say the locally funded positions. If the state gives the COLA, you can't not give it to the locally funded positions.
Well, the other
But
thing
we
is
can
too,
cut
they haven't
their
adopted a
operational
budget.
budget, that whatever that COLA number locally funded is, and say, hello, our employees are making sacrifices. You all may need to figure out how to make some personal sacrifices as well. It's just, you can't, I have a problem when there's two castes, right? Those that have to answer to us, and we answer to our taxpayers, and those that
Well,
Well, the state still hasn't adopted a budget, correct?
Yeah, I mean the state hasn't adopted a budget for the year we're currently in
Yeah.
yet. So,
So I mean,
and it,
I can't answer the question about COLAs yet because I don't know that.
they haven't made that decision.
But I mean,
Yeah.
our
State has
teachers,
been
though, are important
passing
to our
many
kids, and they're
budgets.
only
Yeah.
being
But
but
I
But
understand.
like,
your
for
point.
example, if their budget includes longevity, right? Okay, that's one thing that we really have, just like county, we don't really have a lot of control over that. But, are there pay raises in there? I mean, I'd like to see more than a lump sum. Here's what we're paying teachers countywide as a lump sum.
Well, like I said, I will try to set up a meeting for next week.
I would later part of next week probably.
Well, I know Bob mentioned he couldn't do it next week, so I definitely want Selena to represent our board.
I
Well, I
thought
thought
we
the
were all
entire
meeting,
board
though.
It would be the entire board.
Okay.
Easy.
We would.
Okay.
We would have an
we
official
got Owen,
board
we got Owen
meeting.
signed up for a bunch of other stuff
Wouldn't
too.
miss that for the.
No,
We'd have
Oh,
an
really?
official board meeting, and they would come give a budget presentation. So let's finish capital, and then we'll get into the operating side.
Look at the time.
Had a conversation with both of the chairs. Had a conversation along with myself and the superintendent. One thing I did inform them is that if the budget holds like like I predicted, and like I said, it may not, that they've got to start thinking about more debt to be able to handle their school project, the elementary school. And you start getting to the point where they've got to have a conversation about bonds on a ballot. And so that would not be able to go to the ballot until 2022. So you couldn't borrow the money probably until 2023. A year, is that a safe bet to get a bond? Yeah. So that means that you probably couldn't start construction on that until 2023. If you have to go to the bond market. But if they're going to go to the bond market, they need to plan ahead, not just a school, but the next handful of schools. So the recommendation I gave them, if you feel like that's going to cause a problem operationally, then start looking at redistricting and mobile classrooms.
So, bluntly, Moyock Elementary School is at least 3 years out, beginning construction.
If the economy goes worst case scenario, I mean, I think that's where we're at. So, because we were going to get into our general fund balance to help out with some of the construction cost on the school, and if the economy doesn't rebound, I can't in good conscience do that. Recommend that, I should say. It's ultimately y'all's decision. But,
And the response to that was?
they just had questions about how bonds work.
Okay.
So I don't know what internal discussions they've had about that.
It.
We've been talking about picking the site
And that was the next question.
Could have had a baby
Did we
as long as it's taken.
resolve where the
That's
elementary-
their.
But they've not come up with a decision.
I don't know.
Got it.
I'm staying. That I've tried to keep a good separation because of how tied up into stuff it is. That's their issue. I know that they have looked at getting an architect to look at plans that have already been approved so that they can modify those plans slightly. You're going to have to modify any plans you pick slightly to make it work on a site or for what you want, but I don't know if they've picked an architect or not yet. So
They were leaning, according to the newspaper, to Height out of Greenville, North Carolina. So that tells me that the prototype Jarvisburg Shawver Elementary is off the table.
Well, maybe they can give us a little update during that meeting we have with them next week.
I can ask them to
Yeah, we
provide
can
that
just
as well.
Provide that for us too then.
While we're talking about the meeting, what's the availability of everybody in this room next week?
Just name it.
Just name the time and day.
Just make it in the evening.
Evening? Okay.
Yeah.
So it'll have to be towards the end of the week because we've got a commissioner meeting.
Yeah,
On
so maybe,
Monday.
yeah, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So,
Yeah.
or Wednesday, Thursday, excuse me. I don't know about Friday.
Okay. Evenings? Okay. So on to the operational expenditures for the schools. We just followed the formula, same as we normally do, and it's roughly an extra $500,000 to the school systems for next year. So, yeah, and this is a question that we have right now. So, Sandra, can you talk through the funding formula and your calculation on that?
And what we're looking at, what is it, 12?
For their operational,
Yeah, I'm at the right.
it's 11.4.
Okay.
Okay, there it is.
There's a historic formula and there's this 2% cap because several years ago, the Board of Commissioners agreed to not drop below 2%.
Correct.
That expires June 30th, 2021. So this budget that we are working on, the consumer price index is 1.8. So we're going to go with the 2% cap. On the formula sheet for the consumer price index that we have used historically as long as I've been here, there are two numbers for the December 31st consumer price index. One is a December to December, and one is an average to average. Historically, we have always used the average to average. This becomes a conversation with the schools at this time of year almost every year when we use the one that's lower. But this year it's 1.8 on the average to average, so we're going to go with the 2 point.
It benefits
the
them this
2%.
year.
Benefits them.
It benefits us.
Well, good point. Yes, we're all in this together.
Anyway,
It benefits the county.
right, whatever.
There you go.
But anyway, that's where that number comes from. Last year, their funding gave them $2,601.82. When you multiply that times 2%, you come up with the $2,653.86. All of these ADM numbers I got from the school system. The $4,332 is the projected planning allotment by DPI. They have 9 students that attend out-of-county schools. We include those in the formula. They have 49 students that are from outside of the county coming into our schools. We subtract those out. Anyway, you take that number, you multiply it times the incremented funding, and you get a number. Also, several years ago, We agreed to pay for a CTE coordinator and the insurance. That is this number here, the salary for the coordinator, and that includes benefits and everything. And then the 36 students that they have in the program with insurance for $21. So that's that number, and that brings you to the projection for the year, and that's the number of funding. Last year's funding was $10,968.18. Shows that that will give you an increase of $510,078 for this year, and they are projecting 159 more students this year than they had last year. So overall, the increase is 3.85 when you talk in ADM, and here are your fundings in dollars.
This is something else that I'll ask them to address when they present. I believe that some of the COVID money that flows down from the state goes to the school system to help offset the cost of the meal programs.
Okay.
But I'll ask them to address that as well.
I believe it does.
Because that's there potentially is savings there, because that is funds that they were going to spend out that they don't have to. So
it might not be that much.
it might not.
But you've got several of not that muches,
Yeah.
and that might amount to something.
So I'm not going to walk through
No.
that budget. So we'll just keep going with our spreadsheet.
Good.
And I'll ask them
Sorry.
to come in and give some more in-depth explanation on their operating and capital budgets. Debt service. The debt service that's in there now is the public safety building. Next are just agency appropriations. You can keep. Disaster recovery only gets stuff added into the budget, so what you see in last year is from Dorian.
Dorian and this one. Well, there's a COVID one, but it's all
Yeah.
like
And then these are transfers to other funds. So your kind of your largest transfers, you've got the 1.2 we talked about going to solid waste. You got 1.6 million going to Corolla Fire District, and you've got 1 million going to Knott's Island. The so if any questions about general fund before we jump over to Knott's Island and Corolla Fire? All right.
So I guess just what you're, well,
Was this a yes?
yes, I do have a question. So that's the final number for that with the revised COVID of 57,328,000. Is that it? Okay.
So compared to what our revised budget was, where we had to add some stuff in, it's a reduction from that. So basically, you can see COVID. We cut approximately $5 million out of our budget because of COVID. Out of our general fund, that can't include OCTAX and other things, but because the budget that I had finished before COVID was done. I mean, we were going to present it probably in April to you all, and that's where you had the number. It went from 62 to 57. Okay. So we'll go to Corolla Fire. So on the revenue side, the Safer Grant funding goes down a little bit last year. On the expenditure side, you can see there's not really any change to personnel to speak of. Not much of a change to operating or capital outlay even.
One of the questions I had is under operating in Corolla. I believe there's 12 grand in this budget for fuel, for example. Mm-hmm. And in the volunteer budget is 16 grand for fuel.
So, and I'll ask Sandra to jump in here a little bit.
Because I gotta believe the permanent folks are driving around more than the volunteers are.
Well, we get paged out to mutual aid to Crawford fires and then all, I mean.
He's talking about just Corolla.
I'm just talking Corolla.
Okay.
And what Paul's alluding to is the fact that we've got it budgeted in two places right now for fuel.
I could understand, there being a volunteer side of the house as well, but the volunteer budget is $4 grand greater than the permanent staffing. And
Budget down here, the volunteer budget is for the fire trucks, and they're driving around. The other is for the supervisors that are over here that are driving back and forth and things like that. When we originally set up these two budgets, the stuff that Corolla volunteer system typically had paid for, the utilities for the buildings, the fuel for the fire trucks, for the volunteers, for the stuff that they did, is in this budget down here, and the operational stuff that was above and beyond what they were already doing is in the top budget.
okay.
I mean, their fuel is, they all have Right Express cards. Every station around here does. And they have, they're billed out based on the way the person that keys it in. So if they're one way or the other, the way they key it is how it is actually broken up. But those two things, one is for the county staff and the other is for the volunteer, but that includes all of the fire trucks and all of the calls that they go on and that kind of thing.
So what she's saying, the fire truck fuel is under Corolla Volunteer Fire Services. Chet's fuel in his supervisor truck is under the other, as an example.
Well, Chet and his supervisor are using almost the same amount as the entire fire department.
They drive to Corova. I mean, they're rolling more than the fire trucks actually roll sometimes. Like, they roll with ambulance calls, too.
Are they rolling in an F-250 or are they rolling in a Freightliner?
F-250, but, what's the actual spend for that last year?
It's not.
Okay.
I guess my point is, I think we need to start moving so that all of the operational costs associated with the department, that the volunteer costs are identified as the volunteer costs, and then the operational side or the county staff side, well,
I think the challenge there is, go back up, Sandra, if you would. I think the challenge there is if you go through the volunteer budget, utilities would probably no longer be a volunteer line. Repairs and maintenance.
All of that was discussed 3 years ago when we were moving in this direction. That the county's paying the electric bill because the county's using the electric. That the staff, the permanent staff, or the...
So, we
that
can
was a discussion that and I think the county's paying the bill anyway.
They're one of the ones that send us the invoice and then we pay the bill.
So, from a budgeting, from a accounting perspective, I would think as much as we can pull into what is appropriate. In other words, keeping a volunteer fire budget just because it's a separate account and that's the way we did it, right, is not.
I don't think that. So I don't know that that's the reason it's done because that's the way we did it. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I wasn't part of any of these discussions, but that's probably done because if all of a sudden Corolla Volunteer Fire Department is getting $20,000 a year for postage and buildings and grounds. I'm just making something up. And all the other volunteer fire departments that still exist are getting $200,000 and $300,000 or $150,000. I think you're going to have discord in the volunteer fire realm. I think you don't think the volunteer fire
No,
department.
they understand the game
Okay.
changed, and
Okay.
and the accounting. We always knew that the accounting was going to have to catch up to that.
We can
But-
shift any of these in. I mean,
Right.
That's easy to do on our end.
Right. And maybe we socialize it through the FIAB just to make sure, right? But the intent was always
Okay.
that the volunteer expenses be captured as volunteer expenses,
Yeah, that like I said, for us, it's,
because, for example, some of the maintenance is on volunteer-owned equipment that they should still be budgeted for because the county should be paying for the repairs to their equipment because the county's the ones that are using it, if that makes sense.
so what. And we can get this is good, but we don't need to get too far unless you're wanting to make this change before we get to the next.
No.
But okay, then we can hash it
but
out.
that's something we need to go.
Yeah.
We need to capture what's real, not
Okay.
because. Well, I know we're going to Knott's Island next. That'll be interesting.
So we'll go to Knott's Island.
I want to ask
Yep.
one thing.
Yes,
when
ma'am.
you're looking in the operating costs in the volunteer, why is the COVID more than what you recommended, like in dues and subscriptions, uniforms?
Because we didn't have a official budget from them, and now we do.
Okay.
Knott's Island, here we come.
And there aren't two budgets here because they don't have a full volunteer system anymore.
Okay.
Knott's Island.
That's Island.
Well, they don't have. There's not a. I don't know that they've reconstituted.
Right.
Correct.
They
So
do-
there-
they do have a
there's
tanker,
only
though.
one budget. You won't see a volunteer.
Their volunteers
system.
fall into the county's program. I
Correct.
think, yeah.
So personnel fairly steady. Operating over the budget is a little reduction. Capital outlay, I think the bulk of that there is for a heart monitor. We have to replace, I think, 3 or 6 heart monitors because they're end of life, and I think one of them resides at Knott's Island, so that's why that's there. But capital outlay makes up the bulk of the budget increase in Knott's Island. Any questions? All right.
No, I guess we need to go back to the. Or did we do all the?
I think we did all of operating.
Yeah.
I think the only one we haven't looked at is the 911 budget.
What's the levy one?
Oh, we did.
That's your property tax.
We haven't, okay, but
That tells you. That gives you the.
I'm just looking at the tabs that we've touched base on.
Yeah.
Yeah, this just tells you what 1 cent of tax generates
And then the different districts as
and-
well.
And the amount that you could
And so
budget so it ties to your revenue.
proposed. No proposed tax rate increases. No proposed utility increases. The only proposed increases, there's some new fees that will exist at the airport. Do we have the master fee schedule on here, ready to present?
What tab you on again?
That one, the one she was on was the levy.
Okay, where you at right there?
I'm just
Right.
talking right now.
Oh, okay.
And I'm on my hard drive trying to find the current master fee schedule.
But so basically the fees that would change, and we can roll these out in a lot more depth when we actually present the budget into public hearing, but building it, permit fees, some extra airport fees, which we talked about at the retreat, and increasing the tipping fees to cover just the cost of what the tipping fees are. Does this have the changes in it?
It has the changes of everything except airport.
Okay. So what we'll do on the fee schedule when we present the budget publicly, we'll give you a copy of the fee schedule and then current rates and then the change. So that'll be the easiest way to look at it. But no major changes. Trying to recognizing that the citizens are in hard times, trying to hold taxes where they're at, and instead we chose to make, like I said, pretty hefty cuts to expenditures in order to accommodate that. I think that concludes the budget portion, but we have one other item we needed to come back and discuss, I think, today, which was the sewer discussion.
Oh, about going privatization.
Mm-hmm. And so
You coming back with something to us?
I don't think I was on that. It was more to let you guys kind of digest what.
I still feel like, I mean, it's. I think that Moyoc section is probably good timing for the county to look at proposals for, selling that piece of it off, for getting out of that portion of it. I mean, that would save the $11 million of building a plant up there, and then the operating expenses associated with it afterwards.
Wouldn't we get money from some of that? I mean, wouldn't we receive funds from some of that anyway?
You will.
A, get money, and B, not spend money.
I mean, somebody's gonna buy it, so there will be revenue.
Can I ask a question about that? Because I was reading last night. Would we have to sell it at a loss? Taking in, from what I read last night, we're not allowed to sell it. Now, I don't know, because all I could find was on municipal privatization. I couldn't find any county in North Carolina that has done this, but I found municipalities that had done it specifically with water systems, but they generally lumped water systems and sewer systems in together. And from what I read last night, you're required to sell it with depreciation. You can't sell it at fair market value.
I think some legislation changed.
Well, I couldn't find whether that Senate bill, I can't remember, House Bill 38.
Yeah,
or something
I think
like
it
that.
did pass. So
Okay.
and I don't know that is
2017.
Yeah, and I don't know that and like I said, we've got to do some more research. So first of all, we will take a loss compared to what we paid for the infrastructure. I mean, just when you figure that, because of depreciation, we just
Right.
will. So to answer Kevin's question, yes, there will be revenue, but I don't know that you're going to sell it for more than you paid to install it.
There'd be user fee revenue too. What I'm saying is that will you get
The customer base has value, but the way that I understand, because I talked to Ike after the meeting that we had on Wednesday, and we've got to do a little more research into it, but the way that he explained it to me on selling it, it's basically the same as selling, after that statute passed, it's the same as selling any piece of surplus that the county has. We declare it surplus, we put out what we've got, we bring in proposals, and the high bidder is the one that gets it.
Okay.
That bill specifically addressed the way that, let me see if I can get this right, when a private utility buys a public utility,
We could.
and they go to the utility commission to set their rate, previously they were required to they couldn't use anything above fair market value to set their rate.
Okay.
And now they are allowed to actually use what they paid for the utility. And so because of that bill, it's more likely that public utilities will sell now, because prior to, it was more of a struggle for them to recoup their cost.
Okay, the other issue that I guess I wanted to ask about is I'm trying to open this link so I can get my numbers right. So if you privatize it, we have absolutely no control then over the customer service, the rates, or troubleshooting with this issue. So that is a private body, and citizens have no remedy
Yeah, they do.
with our county to right that.
You're correct. So the citizens have no remedy through the county to correct that. They can go through the Utilities Commission.
Yeah.
So a private entity is governed by the Utilities Commission. So any complaints you have go to that. As far as complaints about, so let me back up, there's different kind of complaints that you can come forward with. There's complaints about the rate, that would go to the Utilities Commission. If there are complaints about the quality, as far as sewage not flowing,
Right.
or as far as sewage not being treated adequately, that would flow through DEQ because they still hold a DEQ permit. So the same state agency that oversees public utilities still oversees the environmental aspect of private utilities. The Utilities Commission really just governs the rates by and large.
And the Utilities Commission is also appointed, am I correct?
That's correct.
So the voter has no say-so in any of this service once we privatize it.
That's correct. It's similar to the way that power, a good example is electricity.
Dominion Power and all that stuff.
So it's no different than Dominion Power, Duke Energy.
Telephone company.
Yep.
Yeah. Cable company, I don't think they're under the,
They are.
I can never remember cable companies.
It just says that once you privatize, rates are generally 40% higher than, 69% higher than the median for wastewater. And this is a 2017 analysis.
Yeah, like I said, the statement that I made Wednesday, I'll stand beside. I'm sure rates are going to go up, but they're going to have to go up no matter.
We spend $11 million, they're going to get a tax increase. Or not, well, not
The
tax,
rate would
but the
have to
rate
go
will
up.
Yeah. And you were going to give us a study. You were going to come back and tell us what that rate increase might be if it went up to 11 million.
Action.
Yeah. So 11 million. Yeah. Like I said, between yesterday or Wednesday and today, I don't have time to get that together. But
Look at it this way.
I think
We're going to throw money at that thing from now on.
And keep throwing it.
Look, and I just go back to look at the fiasco we had with this last plant that we designed and built and spend money on, and it's been a drain on our pocketbooks to get that straight. We had to increase the rates a little bit then, and we spent $11 million, and then the cost of operation, the user fees are going to go up with that kind of money now, double. I mean, good gracious.
As a point of clarity, we haven't paid, well, Owen has, but the county has not really paid that. That's been the folks that are tapped into that system are the ones that have to pay that.
Yes, and that's my other point. Was 11 million of the taxpayers' dollars to the whole county. Good Lord.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of realities that are about to go on. One of them, based upon the costs, it's going up. Whether the county does it or whether a private entity comes in, the fees and the costs for wastewater are going to go up. So the question is, and I get what you're at. What's their recourse?
Yeah.
They can unelect us as because their wastewater went up, but what we charge is controlled. Right. We're constrained by what we can charge because of what it's really costing. So.
It's good. Their
You
rate's
can't
going to go up one way or the
subsidize
other.
Absolutely.
I've been doing a lot ever since the meeting the other day. It kind of bothered me that just all of a sudden we're thinking about selling it. I guess one of the things that has bothered me the most when we've done these little workshops, and one of our main goals that we wanted to see in this county was controlling growth. And we've got the Milliock Small Area Plan that in their plan, they said with water and sewer upgrades, you kind of direct where you want the growth to go. This was a group of people up there who decided what they wanted. That, to me, is what government's supposed to be about. And these people decided where they wanted to see growth and what they wanted to see. And we can sit here and talk all we want about, you can control it by zoning. It will not happen. If we put sewer up there, they're going to be up there to try to make a profit. So that means they're going to run these lines anywhere they want. We'll see development that'll just blow up in Milliock. It's
Okay, well then.
so we've seen also I think if we're going to discuss this, it needs to be thoroughly discussed. We've not evaluated how it's going to affect the users, the citizens, how it's going to break down the costs associated with it. And some of the people who are interested in buying it, aren't they the people who are trying to fix it for us?
One of the companies would be probably, yes, ma'am.
And these companies are having trouble throughout North Carolina.
So the guidance that we will need from the board sooner rather than later is the board comfortable rejecting all bids? We only have 60 days to make that determination.
Is there some way, somebody had told me, well, you know, the road's going to cost $1 million. We put that plant up there to help, which we have talked about. We want I don't know what, the Currituck station or whatever it's called up there. And now we're just kind of kicking that to the road. And also, there's a bond referendum that's supposed to be on the November ballot that is supposed to help counties with exactly the problem we've got.
I think one of the issues is though it's only for Tier 1 and 2 counties.
Yeah, we're tier 3.
I think.
I didn't think it had,
Is that
all I know is,
We are tier 3.
I know we're Tier 3, but I'll look into it. But I mean, I'm running off of a memory from an email a while back, but I think that's only for Tier 1 and 2 counties.
but we're sitting here making a decision that will affect those people, will affect our growth, will just affect so much in the county, and we're just going to do it. Oh, you know, the other day it's like, well, I got 4 votes. That's not how I think citizens want us to conduct our business. And
Well, the citizens I've talked to in my district are asking me, why are we spending their tax dollars, $11 million, which is a portion of going to this, to something they can't use? Why don't we take part of that and build the sewer plant so they can have sewer hookup?
And
not-
so when you build build this plant up there and everything starts booming, that's going to be more schools, more police protection or sheriff's protection, more school buses, more everything. You hear $11 million, but that might be a drop in the bucket to what it's going to cost us in the long run if we got to get rid of it.
And this is just my professional opinion. I think that the stronger control to curtail development is through the rezoning process, though, because what we saw and I'll use the Foss project as an example, they don't have access to sewer, and that project's, moving forward. So I think that most places I've been, sewer is the thing that makes it doable, but in Currituck County, and I think it's partly because the property values are so high and the home sales are so high compared to other parts of the state, a developer can come in and build their own sewer plant.
What I heard from a
Nothing.
meeting in the Albemarle Regional Health and talking to the new director for the wastewater is that the state was going to be looking for easier ways to allow for engineered plants and septic systems to go in to make it. When in the past they were really pushing against. Now they're trying to find ways to make it easier for developments to do the engineered and septic systems to allow for that to happen easier than it was in the past. So, to your point, is correct, man. That even if the county did control the wastewater plants, development, if they want to do the sewage or engineer sewages, are still going to be allowed. It's going to be easier for them to get those permits now.
You know what's really ironic about the whole thing? And this goes back, I want to say it was probably 20-something years ago. This area was not a great area for septic systems.
No, Parkland
period.
is awful.
And the focus at the time through Albemarle Health was to go to centralized sewer systems so that people were coming off of septics. And I want to say it was to Senator Bass Knight it was a kind of a, okay, well, we'll take what prudent restraints are, took them off to allow development specifically in his districts so that we could encourage economic development and growth and population.
So
Well, I just don't
what
want
we
this-
can do is at the staff level is we can put together some projections for the board. We can put together a projection that shows if we build the sewer plant at 11 million, what that looks like, how long it would take to pay that back, if it was done debt-free or interest-free, because like I said, we can't borrow money from a bank for it. If we did it interest-free from the general fund, what would that look like? How long would it take to pay back? And what does it look like once we get to the payback point? And how long will it be until we would have to expand again?
And let's look at the impact it's going to have on the citizens, like Selena was talking about, if the rates keep going up. And then I think about Walnut Island. We had to go in and buy that. What's going to happen when they go up there? Because this company is having problems throughout North Carolina.
There's a
I could just
difference
a
between
DEQ.
Walnut Island
Yeah.
and a private system. Walnut Island was a self-governed system.
So, but we can. I mean, now I'm going to have a hard time projecting rates. I mean, I don't want to. I'm a little uncomfortable. I can project what our rates would need to be. I'm a little uncomfortable projecting what a private company's rates
And I'm
would
just
need.
going on the
But-
research I did
Yeah.
last night. That one was 69%.
Yeah,
But
And how-
utilities,
That's municipal, because I couldn't find any county comparison.
it probably would be very comparable.
Okay.
I mean,
but the Utilities Commission is not going to let them go above a certain
No,
percentage.
they can't.
They have to justify their rates. It's not like we're going to go here and jump these rates and make a big killing. This system was set up to be for commercial use only.
and it will not survive as on commercial use. So let me back up and say one other thing before I move forward. When I project out the sewer and the financials, which I can do that in about a week and a half, I can probably have that data available, I think.
Can you do that with like a redesign too? Because that was one of the options you gave us.
I can
3
give you, yeah, I mean,
options,
and let's say we could save a couple $1 million on the. My only concern with the redesign is, do we save the couple $1 million and we end up with a plant that can't treat what we've got coming
That's
in?
what happened last
So
time.
I just,
Stay as well.
yeah, I'll put
Okay.
that out there, but that's a concern I have. So I can put that together, but you will have to have residential growth in order to pay that back, because of the fact that we don't have enough commercial growth coming in to see the revenues increase enough to cover debt service.
Do you think it would affect Currituck Station if somebody else took it over? You know-
Station just lost the contract that they had on that one property last week.
I think that sewer availability is the question for Currituck Station. I don't think that it's necessarily who runs the sewer plant.
And then we won't have any control over, if we don't own it, where the lines go.
Correct. That's correct. But I think the force main runs from the state line pretty much all the way down to Lakeview, like Survey Road.
Yeah, there's this force main.
And so that's really the question here is, where's the force main at? And then, because any developer's going to hook into the force main at the road, probably. I mean, so most development's going to start up at the road and then build its way back.
But if you go into
traditionally.
negotiations, can you put stipulations in negotiations that plant, if a private development came in and purchased it, they would know it on the assumption that Currituck Station would hook into it?
I'd have to look into that. I mean, I can tell you that. I mean, I always want to call both of y'all Commissioner Etheridge, but then I hate to call you by your first name in a meeting either.
Tell me anything you
So,
want.
but her point is accurate. I mean, a private company's goal is going to be to hook up as many people as possible,
Right.
because that's how they generate revenue.
So they would want Currituck Station.
I mean, probably. I mean, I'm not going to tell you for sure, but
Now,
especially
the-
residential.
Well,
I mean,
the other caveat to this now is we doubled our thought on the budget from 6 to 11, well, roughly almost doubled it, which part of those funds we were planning on using going towards a school. So if we built this sewage plant, whatever phase we do that, and we still have to build this school, we are probably looking at
you're going to have to substantially debt the school if you spend $11 million
going to
on
look
a
at sort
sewer
of giving
plant.
something to the county to go up with possibly taxes then.
So
Sir,
there's a whole lot of unknowns
I
here.
know,
but
there is.
if the economy recovered and we got back to the same level that we were at prior to the pandemic,
Okay.
and you built the sewer plant for $11 million, the plan that we had put into place would have allowed the debt service to be covered by a sales tax that's dedicated to the schools and lottery funds. Therefore, our operational cost wouldn't be impacted by that debt service. If you spend $11 million on a sewer plant, debt service payments will have to come out of money that would have been used for county operational activities, unless it is included in a larger bond package or property taxes are increased to help offset the debt service for a school. But if you have a bond package, property taxes go up anyway. That's how
Yeah, I
bonds
know,
work. So.
The thing
there-
about this sewer system, we lent money to get it started in 2012. They still haven't paid that back.
So let's
why-
include that payback.
Huh?
No, let's include the payback into his adjustments then.
Hasn't paid it now. How are you going to
Well, listen,
project it to pay it going forward?
I'll run a financial model and see what that looks like, and what the rate would need to be in order. And so let me ask a question, because this is a really important aspect of this model. So I guess my question to the board would be, how many years are you willing to let that debt be paid back over? The term, in other words, of
Is
the
there a
loan.
is there a legal limit?
I mean, 40 years, I guess, might be the legal
Oh,
limit.
okay.
Oh, to repay the general fund?
Yeah. I mean, is there? I don't even.
Not for an
Intergovernmental
loan.
1,000 years.
Another question is, how long are you going to be willing to subsidize it out of the general fund
Well,
necessary?
what I'm going to do is take the rate where it's not subsidized
Okay.
at all, except for this capital in my model. And then I will,
Based on
but I need to know a
users.
term that you'd be comfortable paying it back.
Is there any, when I was reading last night, is there any way that companies come in and lease? Isn't that an option also? I just have a problem thinking they're telling us it can't be fixed, and they're the ones who are trying to fix it, who are interested in buying it. And I did go to that community meeting that they had up in Mayock. And at that meeting was Mark Bissell and Justin Old. And this is the same company that now is trying to buy it.
Well, it's a company that would have interest. I mean,
Right, I know you have to advertise.
yeah, I mean, I don't want to.
Is there any companies who come in and lease and manage it?
So
Is that an option?
They probably would, but if they come in and lease and manage it, we're still going to be collecting the money. So any rate increases are going to have to be approved by the Board of Commissioners.
But we would have control over it, whereas if we sell it, we lose complete control.
You would have you'd have control over it, but the liability would also be yours.
And we'd still have to build the plant, though, at 11 million.
You would.
Yes.
So I say that now. I can reach out to companies and see if any of them are willing to build a plant that eventually that we would own, but they get all the revenue off of the customers for some period of time. I mean, I can look into some option like that. I'm thinking out loud now, and I do this sometimes, so I apologize. But
I think the more options you can put in front of us and
but
let us explore, the better decision we'll make. And I know we're under time constraints here, but I mean, this is a serious discussion that's going to have fiscal impacts in many ways. And I think that if we're going to make a decision of this gravity, then we really should have like a menu of choices and like be able to weigh those choices.
I would also suggest a community meeting where
Well,
that's
yes.
all presented and
Yeah, but let's have all
Oh,
the
it would
numbers,
have-
something
right.
they can look at.
and
Yeah,
there
but you
will
got to
be
have something you can
Yes.
a community meeting's fine. But like I said, I've got to have a decision on are we going to reject all bids. And we can, in my opinion, we probably should because
I'm thinking
I'd
that
say
we got to
reject
reject
them.
all
Yeah,
the bids.
We're not
because-
prepared for $11
I mean,
million.
I just don't think we have time to make a good. I feel like if we're worried about whether we're going to accept these bids, we're going to make a rush decision, and that to me, could be costly in
What's-
so many ways.
What's the negative implication for rejecting all of
There's,
this?
I don't know that there is a negative
really-
implication.
And I mean, certainly, I think if we're going to make a decision that has this much weight, I really think we should reject the bids and then really sit down and study our options and make a good, clear decision with those options.
Yeah, I
With
can't.
By
citizens'
rejecting-
input.
By rejecting the bids, if things do get a little bit tighter, construction firms will be begging for business, and it might drive the cost down.
Yeah, because for accepting a bid that was doubled what we were budgeting, I can't do that. I
that's-
can't
The
accept
the only negative, and I should say this, is time frame. But if you redesign or if you go into a sale situation, then you're still going to push the time frame out. So all three options, rejecting bid. The only option that doesn't have that as a negative is to build the $11 million plant.
that.
So,
That's crazy.
No, I can't spend that money right now.
so
right now.
I mean, I think we should reject the bids and do a cost-benefit analysis of our options.
So we'll put together a financial model, and if we built the plant, I'll try to see if we got folks out there who are willing to, one, lease, or two, build with the kind of like a ground lease, essentially, like at the airport, where they build the facility and then at some point we own the facility. And then, like I said, though, all I'll be able to project is our potential rates.
Is there any other models that would be close to this that we could look at from neighboring or somewheres in the state that would give us a rough just idea what the rates could be or not?
So there's a really good package that the School of Government has. It's a utility comparison, but the problem for us is that our sewer system is so different from most other sewer systems because it's not in a dense city.
No, I know.
I mean, that makes it a little bit of a challenge, but I'll look around and see what there is.
Yeah.
Let me
Well,
ask
when
you
you look
this.
at the Institute of Government, it says that Currituck hadn't even had a rate increase since 2014.
It's because, and so you can't look at them because what they do, we send them all of our data, but they only look at, like, I think they look at ocean sands. That you can't use that little tool because also most cities have a sewer department. We've got 2 sewer departments. Most cities have a water department. We've got 2 water departments, and so it gets really, you can't really look at it. You have to take the numbers out, and you can't use the School of Government's tool for Currituck County because the data's not clean.
And if something were to happen if we did sell it, we had a private company, and God forbid they had problems, people are going to come looking at us. That's who they're going to come to, not the company.
But and I agree. But at least the other side of it though is if they do something wrong or something, they're the ones going to have to be paying the fines and be hit with the legal issues, not the county. But yes, the citizens are going to be looking.
And
at
it
us.
depends on the company you pick because some companies probably
That's the business.
have
model.
the.
Yes.
And I'm not saying any companies in particular. I'm saying some companies are large enough that
Yeah.
they wouldn't. They'll get to a certain point and then they're going to fix it because they can't.
But I also read somewhere that, say, if there was a problem, that the county still could be liable for some things. Like I say, I read so much about it.
I think
I
that's
think we need to work
on a
work
lease
session.
agreement. I think the county could still be liable, but once you sell,
You're out of it.
yeah.
Here's the question. $11 million only gets us to where we're at today.
Get you a little beyond that, but not. I mean,
It
So-
doesn't address Currituck Station.
not the full project.
It doesn't address what other growth is coming up in Marriott. It just gets us to where we are today.
And so what I'm going to do is project a growth rate on sewer. I'll give you also a number of households that equates to, so you all know when I project it out. And we'll look at the number of commercial additions we've had and kind of base it on trend on that and trend on number of households because we will have to have residential households hook up in order to make those payments back to the general fund.
And I guess
just a side question then. Let's say we decided to build this and keep it under our budget and spend $11 million. What does that do for future growth or expansion on the lower end of the county that might need sewer? Does that put that even further back, probably? Just hypothetically, with the cost of everything?
Gosh, I don't even know. I don't even know how to answer the question right now.
Well, because I know there's been talk that there's good potential growth on the south end, but if we spend this and not, I mean, we'd be looking at another chunk of money then.
Well, I think you would. I think if you did, I mean, if we go that route and we say that this is gonna, if we're gonna be firm and say this has got to pay this money back, which I think if you're gonna spend this money, you have to, for the financial security of the county. Then I think you would say the same for whatever's on the lower end. And the problem with that is that you're not going to have many customers. That rate will be really high.
Yeah.
Now, so I still need a kind of some direction on the term, though.
Oof.
Like as far as number of years that. A couple questions as I put the model together. Do you want it to start paying back in year one, or do you want to give a grace period until it starts to pay back?
Grace period.
And how long of a grace period?
Well, if we put it in a grace period, then that initial fund would then come out of our operating costs for the next year.
Well, it's going to come out of our fund. I mean, it's going to. I mean, so if is there a grace period, and then I need to know and if so, how long, and then I need to know the term.
I mean, it's going to be a shock no matter if you wait a year or 2 years. There's going to be an increase. I don't know that a grace period does anything more than delay it and increase the payback. So, I mean, there's going to be a shock if you say, okay, we're going to give a grace period of 2 years. Well, the reality is that when that 2 years come, there's going to be sticker shock. I mean, that's the reality.
So as soon as it's built, the very next fiscal year, the sewer system would need to start paying back the $11 million. And how long of a term?
Well, Commissioner Arthur, you said that when the county loaned money or did a self-borrowed money for the first plant, was it discussed for that to be paid back?
Yeah,
And we haven't even started collecting on that one yet, correct?
yeah, because it was noted as a loan from the general fund.
I don't know that we know enough
Wow.
to tell you what you're asking.
That's the way I feel. I mean,
I almost want to see if we have a grace period, this is what it looks like.
Okay.
If it's 3 years, this is what it looks.
What I'll do is
think we know
I'll
enough.
build a spreadsheet that allows us to click through options.
Okay.
what I'd like.
And as we click through the options, it'll automatically adjust the rate, because that's essentially what the question is what rate do
Because
you need?
I guarantee you, a private entity that rolls in is going to want to start paying it back
Immediately.
the year they open the valve.
So yeah, we'll look at with a grace period, without a grace period. How far out are you willing to take the term?
What's Moyoc? What was the original one on Moyoc?
Oh, we never paid it back, so I don't know. I mean, to give you an idea, we try to keep our debt service to 10.
No, we did pay the first one back.
The first general fund loan or the first?
Well, it was paid off.
Gotcha.
Borrowed
Then we
money.
paid off the second one in advance, but the first one, I believe, was 7 years, because that's typically about.
That's what I was thinking. Is 7
And,
So
years.
let's
and
look
the
at
other
the 7
thing you
years
kind
on
of
it.
have to keep in mind is
The next.
when will
debt.
you have to have
Yeah.
another expansion?
Exactly.
And that'll be
because
modeled
it's
as
just gonna
well.
Keep building on top of each other if you go out too long.
There's an
Well,
algorithm.
Yeah, let's
that'll-
look at that, because if a utility comes in, they're going to look at probably a short 7 years too. They're not going to extend it too long.
So we'll do a 7-year term with grace periods, with years that are adjustable. We'll base our development on the trends that we've seen, and what we'll do is project out what the rates would have to be if we kept it. I'll try to get some information on leases, just in general. I won't have a lot of specifics because you don't get into that until you start to actually negotiate a.
And Sandra was talking about they're going to want to keep adding more hookups.
Well, the
We
county
need to
would have
look
to.
at the
Well, we're gonna
impact
have
it's
to
going
do
to
the
have
same
on the
thing.
area also.
Well, I don't.
And I know you say we control it by zoning, but you know, that's just like we had back a year and a half ago said we were going to either increase lot sizes or decrease density. And I sit here a year and a half later and we've done neither.
Well, what we decided at the retreat was to remove PDR from the ordinance, and so whenever the planning. I mean, that's in the group of amendments that's going to come forward. So that's I think what the board gave staff direction on. So, but yeah, we're I can come up with an estimated cost for what each household and extra services generates. I mean, it's going to be real rough.
Because
But But like I said, I don't know that it's tied to, because of the way that we've seen subdivisions provide their own sewer potentially now. I don't know that you can draw a direct line from one to the other.
you would have to use the current hookups in your formula right now, correct?
Explain what you mean.
Well, I mean, if you're going to projecting how much what the rate would be if we build $11 million and pay back in 7 years, you'd have to use the current.
I'm going to estimate new homes coming on.
Okay, you will use an estimate.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I will estimate growth,
Okay.
and so that means we would have to hook up we're going to have to hook up other residential subdivisions.
So at first the rate would be higher, then it might drop a year based on growth,
It could.
or you would project that rate based on a projected growth, that amount.
I don't think you'll ever find a rate dropping.
No.
Well, then you'd have to initially put that rate then projected.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what we'll do. But I'll come up. I mean, basically, what we'll do is we'll try to tie law enforcement, EMS, schools.
So going back to the payback, if you throw the switch and say, okay, Currituck Commons or Currituck Station's wastewater is now running, both people are now going to pay for. You may only have 1,000 that connect or 100 that connect, and proportionally, their payback. If you're trying to pay back the loan immediately, it becomes an interesting mathematical exercise in trying to figure out, as usage increases, these people can't pay $1 million a year in wastewater.
You've got to balance it out. Yeah.
Because, Paul, if you remember in our discussions originally with Currituck Stations, that was a 10 to 20 year projected plan. Project, not immediate. So, well, my point, we were talking 10, 20 years out. So the initial cost is not going to, the payback's not going to come from Currituck Station. So your calculations when you do that, I don't know if you should include Currituck Station because
I'm not going to say where they're coming from. I'm just going to say we need this number of houses. This is the number of houses.
Because Currituck Station was a 10, 20 year projected plan out.
Yeah, I mean, so ballpark, I mean, if it's $11 million over 7 years, I mean, let's just say it's 11 years, so it's $1 million. Right now, your current sewer rate generates $660,000 in revenue every year.
Ouch.
So to pay back $1 million a year, you're going to have to
Jacket.
You'd have to double the rate again.
Wow.
But that's if you don't add any new customers, which I'm going to put that in there.
I understand, but
Bottom line is, regardless of who has the
It'll be a rate
system,
increase.
There's going to be a rate increase, and there's going to have to be more connections than what's there today.
Yes, sir.
It's going to have
To make it economically feasible. Unless and if you want it to pay back the $11 million. Unless you're comfortable saying that the $11 million is.
I want
Yes.
somebody to lease it.
Nobody's going to lease something that's just going to lose money.
And I don't know about that. I mean, I think that there are people who would look in. I mean, that's something we can look at, but I don't know how the leases are written either, as far as what control we still maintain.
I
But
think it's such a big decision. We need to put a little bit more.
Wow, look at the
we
time.
can do that.
okay. All right. No, I agree, but I'm just either way they're going to be
Yeah.
going up.
So we're gonna. I'm going to summarize because then I think we're done, unless you all wanted to.
Oh, I'm done.
Have other discussions. So we've got the schools. We're going to try to get them into next week. We've got, and so we'll try to have the sewer modeling done for the first or second meeting in June. I just got to see how it comes together.
Reject all these bids now.
But we'll go ahead and reject. Yeah.
Yep.
And then there was one other thing, and now I can't remember
Oh my gosh.
what
What
it
about the
was.
school board?
No, it was actually about operationally, about kind of COVID and all that. Just a quick update. When the governor announces that we're going to phase 2, we'll bring employees back in. We talked about some of that on Wednesday. Once that happens, the planning board and advisory boards will start meeting again once we go to phase 2. There is probably going to need to be multiple planning board meetings and multiple board of commissioner meetings or extra meetings in the month of June, because we've got a backlog of not just projects but text amendments that need to come through.
I would suggest we try to avoid more meetings and just run them later. Nights are few and far between, and between all the advisory boards that we all sit on, I don't need more nights.
Okay.
Sleep is optional, but Kevin doesn't sleep. He's the hardest working man in.
Well, thank you all for sticking in there with me for a couple of days. So I know that some of this is pretty dry.